Madam Clerk, can you please take roll?
Councilmember Gama,
Here.
Councilmember Hernandez,
Here.
Councilmember McQueen LaShawn,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Perez,
Here.
and Mayor Martinez.
Present. Today we have Councilmember Gama presenting inspiration.
The more I learned about him, the more inspired I became. Mayor Martinez says a really good teacher impacts thousands of kids. Sometimes a student comes around who has a profound positive impact on the adults who work with them. Today, my inspiration is about a kid just like that. We all have challenges, and certainly most of our challenges we overcome in school. There are some things that we can't change and we just have to learn to live with. See if I can work this right. Matthew Jacob Austin lived a short life, but it was a very plentiful life. So Jacob had challenges far more than the rest of us can even fathom. Yet he was always happy, always trying to improve on the things he could improve on. He accepted his life's fate and was extremely inspirational to all those who came in contact with him. Jacob wanted to be a doctor, and he had this happy spirit each and every day of his life, despite the challenges he faced. So many times, Jacob would face seemingly insurmountable challenges. And time after time, he would pull through, and a phrase developed, and it was called pulling a Jacob. So when he fell ill in June of 2023, it was anticipated that he would be pulling a Jacob. Pulling a Jacob is something that all of us have to try and do from time to time. Unfortunately, Jacob was unable to overcome a viral infection that entered his lungs. He passed away on June 6, 2023, at the tender age of 6. While the staff at his school and his family were very saddened, they knew he was a special angel who in his short life always beamed with happiness, always made those around him feel good, and he earned the title Joyful Jake. When a kid like Jacob comes along, it makes all who come in contact with him realize their challenges are minor, and if Jacob can thrive, so can they. Jacob showed all it's better to have fun with whatever you're going through rather than be in despair. I understand Jacob would greet all with a smile and hello. Even when he was in the hospital battling his illness, he made it a point to FaceTime his infant sibling. This is a 6-year-old kid battling a very serious illness. At his memorial, his family handed out little hearts with the inscription, "It's all about love." From all that I've seen in the photographs of Jacob, he cherished each moment. We all can learn a lot from Jacob. In his short life here at Bard Elementary, in his 6 years, he met every challenge in a joyful manner. The other side of this inspirational story is the staff at Bard Elementary who worked with Jacob each and every day. To all of you who work with Jacob and work with other kids, on behalf of our city council and our city, we thank you for the tireless work you do. We thank you for giving kids like Jacob the love and attention they need to grow. We often forget about those who face challenges each day, but the teachers, paraeducators, and support staff who work tirelessly to make their lives better are reminded each day. So when tough times come, and we all will face them, just pull a Jacob, overcome it. I'm told Jacob has had a positive impact on those who worked with him, so much so that the school staff, family, and friends are rallying around the concept of pulling the Jacob. When any of us are facing insurmountable challenges, be joyful. Jacob's life of 6 years is heartbreaking, but his joyfulness and spirit can live through all of us. Yes, he is gone too soon. Life is precious, and we all can find happiness in all that we do. And we can be joyful, happy, and determined to make the most out of our being. As we have, all we have is today, and we might as well be like Joyful Jake. I have a second part of my inspiration, and it has to do with the work we do at Wainimi Beach and Ormond Beach. And it's an example of pulling a Jacob. So one day we were out doing our trash thing, and over the last 7 years, we have a lot of kids that come out, and I get to watch kids become adults and come in shorter than me and leave taller than me. And we had made a mistake, and we had put a dumpster in a place that we shouldn't have placed it. And when we figured out that we did that, we went to inspect the area to make sure everything was cool, and we found this. We found a pelican with a lure stuck in its neck. And imagine if you're a pelican, you wake up in the day and you get a lure stuck in your neck, and then you get stuck in a fence and you're stuck, and what's going to help you? And if not for a mistake, we would not have found this guy. And so we helped him pull a Jacob, and it took about an hour to get him untangled. And we finally got him untangled and carried him back to the beach. And we united him with Marine Rescue. And you could see his wings weren't broken, and we were very relieved to know that. I tried to get an update to see if he has made it back out to the wild yet, and I'm pretty hopeful he did, but I haven't heard back from Marine Rescue. Be joyful, never give up, pull a Jacob. That's what we want to say. And there is a GoFundMe page for Jacob if anyone's interested in trying to help out the family. This is a beautiful kid, and we can learn a lot from little kids that face tough journeys and do it positively and happily and joyfully, and that's the challenge for all of us. Thank you.
Used to this. Thank you, Councilmember Gama. Reminder that life is fragile and we have to make the best of life. We will now hear public comments not pertaining to items on the agenda. Zoom participants, please use the raise your hand feature if you would like to comment. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. This process will be the same for comments pertaining to the agenda item. Madam Clerk, does anyone have a public comment tonight?
Yes, our first comment will be from Tracy J.
Hello. Before I start, they asked if you could please turn it up. I know most of you. I met most of you. I'm here today to talk to you about the red painted curves. I'm sure you guys have already heard a little bit about it. I spoke to James already. I spoke to Steve. Had been working with them to try to slim back some of the red painted on Pleasant Valley because we have several parking issues, and we have the marijuana store. I was trying to get the bus slimmed back or moved to a different location, and then to my surprise, the following week, I came to find that they painted almost the entire street down Panoma with many new 30-foot red striped, inconsistent parking, no parkings. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me the way that they're set up. I did write up something, but I decided I'd just rather speak from the heart. But a lot of the parking is kind of inconsistent. So if you look at two corners, you'll find one that has 30 and one that doesn't, or one that stops right before the fire hydrant, or the other side, you have the bus stop, but doesn't cover the corner. So if you look at even on Pleasant Valley, our homes sit back further, but to the right, there's the marijuana store that sits right up to the curb. They have a 3-foot red curb and then a green stripe that's allowable. On the other side, there's 30 feet of no parking where our houses sit back. So I'd like you to please consider this parking, because it really does cause a hardship on the people who live in the area. Myself personally, we do have only a 2-car garage. We have no driveways. Most days we never park in front of our house because there's no allowable. I have 2 children that drive. They're the ones that park out into the world. There's no parking available. We have a new duplex going in. There's no parking provisions for it, so I expect to be a little bit more constrained. We have several little parking complexes or duplex complexes that take a lot of our parking. So I'm asking that we have more discussion on these red parking curves that really cause a hardship on the people who live in those areas. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Eric, could I comment just quickly? So as I think people who attend often may know, the council's not able to comment on public comment, but as a staff person, I can just note that we are aware of the issues related to the red curb, and I actually thank Tracy, who took me around and showed me some of those issues. And so as of right now, we have paused the any red curb painting, And we are planning for a public discussion on September 18th that we're already working on related to traffic safety options and traffic safety improvements. And we'll try to incorporate this so we can have a discussion about where we see these things being appropriate and where other ideas are needed. So that is the plan as of this time. In the meantime, the curb painting has been paused. So thank you.
Next.
Next is Roy.
Good evening, council members. My name is Roy Ribeiro, and I'm the director of the Oxnard Alano. And this is in reference to a possible move to the new location from the Pleasant Valley Plaza to the Port City Plaza. The Oxnard Alano Club was established in 1971, assisting individuals on their road to recovery, with 12-step meetings and a social club. Since 2016, the Oxnard Alano Club extended our services to include services to our community members to find balance in their life. We partnered with Census 2020, Ventura County COVID-19 Vaccine Committee. We assisted their ability to reach the hard-to-count individuals and family in the community. Since the success of these programs, we joined the Ventura County Assessment Committee for the Ventura County Superior Court Community Service Program, assisting Ventura County community members the ability to volunteer at nonprofit organizations in lieu of balances owed to Ventura County. Since the conception of this program, we assisted Ventura County residents to work off almost $300,000 in fines and fees that they owed Ventura County. In 2021, we partnered with Food Share Ventura County. The Oxnard Alano Club Pantry distributed over 167,000 pounds of food our first year to our local participants in South Oxnard and Port Hueneme residents. Last year, the increased need for our services in the South Oxnard and Hueneme area attributed to our distributing of over 694,000 pounds of food to our neighboring residents of South Oxnard and Port Hueneme. This will allow us to be able to continue our services for the residents in Ventura County and South Oxnard. The Oxnard Alano Club is looking forward to partnering with the City of Port Hueneme at our proposed new location at Port City Plaza. Thank you.
Thank you, Roy.
Mayor, that concludes the in-person public comments, but I do have 2 written public comments. The first one is, Dear Port Hueneme City Council, I'm a longtime resident of Port Hueneme, and I have supported our council in previous elections. I have had confidence that all of you would make the appropriate decisions, and I have seen that in a lot of actions taken by the council, but I am disheartened that I have not seen that you have put the city attorney up for review. Aren't we as a city facing lawsuits because the past city manager, Mr. Connors, and the city attorney who obviously supported him? I believe it is time to move forward and look for an alternate city attorney, or at the least take time to review his conduct as the city attorney for appropriate conduct with the city's interests at heart rather than his personal agenda. Thanks for your time and effort on behalf of our home. Sincerely, Mark McLernan. The next one is from Nathan Finch. To the City Council and Manager, I am writing to express my displeasure and disgust with the city's action in removing most of the street parking on Panoma Street between Clara and Pleasant Valley Road. This was done without any notice or public comment and shows a great deal of disrespect for the working class people that live in this neighborhood. Panoma Street is in great need of traffic calming to reduce the dangers of speeding motorists, and removing the street parking does exactly the opposite. This will increase sight lines, which will increase the speed of the drivers. This reduced parking will also increase the stress on the people who already live in this neighborhood that already has insufficient parking. Please reverse this action and restore the street to the previous configuration. Respectfully, Nathan Finch.
Is there anything we can do to raise up the volume? I think people can't really hear us.
Okay. Okay, is that a little? Okay.
Is that better? Yeah?
And then there are no public comments on Zoom.
Okay. All right, we're moving on to the agenda approval for tonight's city council meeting. May I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda?
Move to approve. Second.
Madam Clerk, can we please take a vote?
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, motion carries.
All right, we're moving on to conflict of interest declaration. Do any members of council have any conflicts of interest to disclose for any one item? I will mention that I will recuse myself on item number 8 since I'm the subject matter for number 8. Let's move on to presentations. First presentation, 2023 Wainimi Heroes Award Proclamation honoring Becky Bruning. Um, I will be reading the following proclamation. 2023 Wainimi Heroes Award, Becky Bruning. Whereas the city of Port Wainimi established the Wainimi Heroes Award to honor persons or groups who embody community values and have made extraordinary community contributions. And whereas Becky Bruning has had a positive impact on the city of Port Wainimi community. And whereas Ms. Bruning has served many organizations in many capacities over the years, including as a former president of the Friends of the Bard Mansion, a treasurer to the Real Guppy Outdoors, a volunteer to Reach, as a member of the City of Port Wainimi's Museum Governance Committee, and has served as chair of the Citizen Advisory Commission since its first meeting on August 11, 2020. And whereas Ms. Bruning regularly attends city council meetings, and whereas Ms. Bruning was unanimously recommended for the Wainimi Heroes Award by the City of Port Wainimi Citizens Advisory Commission and unanimously awarded the honor by the City Council, and whereas Ms. Bruning is not only considered a hero to the City of Port Wainimi community, but also to her husband, 4 children, 21 grandchildren, and 2 great-grandchildren, and whereas Ms. Bruning was formally recognized as the 2023 Wainimi Beach Festival, we will have her portrait framed in the City Hall lobby and her name inscribed on the Wainimi Heroes plaque celebrating her accomplishments. And whereas the City of Port Wainimi is proud of Ms. Bruning and is grateful for her extraordinary community contributions. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the City Council of Port Wainimi does hereby recognize and honor Ms. Bruning as the 2023 Wainimi Heroes Award recipient and commends her contributions. Proclaimed this 5th day of September 2023. Becky, I know this is the 3rd time, but would you like to come up and say some words? We made her speak twice at the Wainimi Beach Festival, so.
Thank you, council. I would like to thank my husband for being here tonight and thank Julia for nominating me, my members of the CAC and the council for voting me in. I don't do what I do to be honored. I do what I do because I love it. I love our city. I was raised here, and I will continue doing what I do. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Chief will get better once.
Okay, we're gonna move on to our second presentation. Presentation from Police Chief Federico regarding the 4th of July deployment and Police Chief's focus areas.
Hello, everyone. It's hard to follow Becky, AKA my nickname for her is the Duchess of Fort Wainimi, so she knows that it's hard to follow, but you're loved and appreciated. So, folks, we were asked to present to you what our deployment strategy was for this year's 4th of July. So what I did is look at what we've done last year and prior years, and to what I could introduce to my team for this year's strategy. I was here for less than 2 weeks when I was presented with what is our strategy going to be for 4th of July deployment. Fortunately, I have brilliant people on my team like Bob Albertson, my commander, my right hand Sylvia, all my team of patrol folks. So I had heard what was working in the past and what we could possibly do now. So I changed things up. And this year, our strategy was different than prior ones because the prior ones did a strategy of all hands come in on the 4th of July, meaning all personnel come in and attack the firework problem, because fireworks are the big concern with the 4th of July deployment. We don't host any events. Our neighbors do, but we don't. So our focus and our known is that there's going to be an increase in fireworks calls. So with that, the strategy to do an all-hands deployment last year was changed because the cost of that operation last year was roughly $5,993. So we're looking at about $6,000 for a one-day deployment to attack the fireworks problem. So changing it up this year, I'm glad to say the number of fireworks radio call service this year was less. Last year, there was more. This year's deployment, the strategy was to perform fireworks enforcement and confiscation in both vehicles and on foot on the days leading up to the 4th of July. So we had a 4th of July that was approaching on a weekday, but that doesn't mean nobody starts partying the weekend before. So we're probably going to get an increase on fireworks, and there'll be a lot of fireworks disturbance calls on the weekend prior. So what did we do? We put some teams together with some young motivated officers, and we had them go out on foot at strategic times to at some of our hotspots and have them begin doing enforcement. They were started on Friday, June 30th. We did not do an all hands call and bring everybody in on the 4th of July. Instead, we just doubled our patrol force. We just doubled up the cars because we knew we would have a higher incident of calls. Again, we're not hosting anything in the city, but we know we'd have a higher incident of calls. So how can we improve those response times and handle what was coming in? And that was to increase double up patrol. So the approximate combined cost of both the prior overtime over the weekend and the doubling up of patrol only cost us about $3,700. So we saved about $2,200 on this approach. And with that, we had a reduction of fireworks calls on the actual day by 13%. Also, on a side note, we had several employees with younger children, one of them with 2 kids under 10 years old, and he very emotionally explained to me it was the first 4th of July as an employee here that he spent with his kids because we would do all hands and everybody comes in. It goes back to my belief that when we do things strategic for the community and we spend strategically, there's a side effect sometimes that benefits our employees. And this was one that did, because I'm huge on employee wellness, anybody that knows me. So we gave some folks a break for the first time and they spent it with their families. And you know what? We still tackled that night. I was out there, Bob Albertson, my commander, was out there, and we worked in the field with the troops and made calls happen. And I went and talked to several people. Again, we did some confiscating prior to, which is a great idea because some of the items we're confiscating could be reused. When you take them away because they're illegal and paraphernalia, they can't be reused. Our efforts, after our efforts, we look at a call reduction of 13%. I appreciate my team a lot, and I appreciate all the discussions prior to this. And was happy to work the 4th of July. I was proud to be back in the city on the 4th of July. Public opinion at several events after this, from talking to my HOA representative groups to folks on the beach to folks in Hueneme Bay at a neighborhood watch meeting. I got a lot of Pacific Collection too. So I think we covered, all points of the city going up and down that I heard from a lot of folks, they felt there was less fireworks this year. So it reinforced the good work of the team this year. So, and that's it on the 4th of July.
Thank you, Chief, for your presentation. Are there any questions?
On the 4th of July one, yes.
Oh, okay. Oh, so we have one more presentation?
Yeah.
Okay, let's hear the second presentation.
You want to do the 4th of July one separate than?
Yeah, okay, let's.
Thank you for your presentation, Chief, and the work that you did for the planning for the 4th of July. I think we spoke the night before, and I recalled the working for City of Santa Monica, and it was always all hands on deck, civilians and patrol. And I think you shared with me you were going to do all hands on deck, similar to Santa Monica. And we talked about the electronic sign that went up, and so I see that you use various tools to curb the use of fireworks for that weekend, but I'm a little confused about the numbers. I appreciate that you did share with us the calls for service, but the budget amount, you said last year we spent $5,000, almost $6,000 in over, was this for overtime?
Yes.
Or was it, okay,
Overtime. We didn't count into those numbers the people who were working their normal shift. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we left the regular working crew alone. It was how much more we spent in overtime to bring folks in. So if I only need 3 or 4 on the 4th of July and I don't need 12 people or more coming in for an 8-hour day, we were able to curb that. We were a little strategic on the overtime because even though it was also a weekday last year, it was a weekday this year. So you pray that people simmer down the further you go into the evening so you can start cutting people loose.
and the confiscation, was that just limited to the spent items that you showed us?
The way it works with fireworks, lots of folks will flee when you pull up and whatever's left on the street, either ready to ignite or whatever is reusable tubes, we can confiscate that because it's illegal. You can't have that.
And what about the PR prior to the 4th of July? What did you guys do to advise people about fireworks violations, about safety?
We did a social media post on our social media. We did the fireworks signs. And part of those, the foot beats of the fireworks enforcement the weekend before was to put the word out, was to talk to people in certain neighborhoods. When the officers are walking and they're telling them, we're out here doing fireworks enforcement, it puts the word out.
So how many officers actually were able to spend time with their families this 4th of July? How many
I don't-
officers would you say?
I would have to do reverse math, so I don't have the exact number, but instead of adding 3 times as many as I hired for patrol, those folks did not have to come in. If that makes sense, like I would have to do reverse math and go back and look at the.
That's
schedule.
okay. That's all right. Well, thank you for your report. Appreciate it.
All right.
Okay, on to the next report.
Okay. I love our IT.
Oh, I had one more
people.
question. I'm sorry. Did you issue any citations
On the 4th of July?
or over that weekend?
No. And
None at
compared to last year, they issued 1 citation. And I looked at how that one came out. Apparently it was a litigated citation and it was whittled down to $40 and it invested. Even the chief of police had to go to court on that one and a sergeant. So we wanted to, the actual enforcement wasn't reducing things. The strategy you do to curb it seemed to work this year, if that makes sense.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, IT. First of all, I'm glad that I'm giving the first presentation on our new technology. Makes me a little giddy.
Can everyone hear him too? Just
That's cool.
double checking. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. All right. You're right. I just stole your thunder. Yes. Councilmember Gama was the first, but, kudos to all the people behind the scenes that made all this happen. We're lucky to have the team that you have in the city, folks, making everything happen. So I was asked what my plan is for the department, and I had an idea of what to do, especially since I've been part of the community for 30 years and I worked here for 10 years, so I had an idea. But if you understand, when I come back home to the PD, I had to do a lot of listening fast because I need to understand my team and I need to understand what's happening now in order for them to understand me and what my plan is. So I did a lot of that quickly, and I met with our union reps regularly. I met with all my employees. I've had the opportunity to meet with all my employees one-on-one. I still have some outreach with some of my explorers and chaplains, everybody, but I'm getting there. Plus all my partners in other city departments, I got great input. Between that and the regular community meetings, some immediate emails, some great conversations with people at events like our National Night Out, in my swearing in ceremony and stuff, I've gotten some good input. So with that, I've developed 5 focus areas in the department. So crime efforts and combating the fear of crime. And I'll explain the fear of crime. Basically, sometimes we have anxiety over stuff in our community that may not be happening, but you see it on the news and it's happening 30 miles away or 50 and you believe it's happening here too. I'm sure some people go to bed at night with their really expensive truck, scared that it's going to be attacked by catalytic converter thieves in the middle of the night. Doesn't always happen in every neighborhood. Does happen. It's smaller things like that that you want to reassure folks that we're paying attention to and we're moving our strategies towards it. Traffic and combating the fear of traffic safety. So in some areas, when you're combating the fear of traffic safety, we can actually put up some devices and get some speed surveys. And if it's actually not as bad as folks think, we can pull those numbers. But if people have a concern on their street, whether they're a resident or a business, that it's occurring, the minute they see an officer, specifically if you put a traffic officer like on a motorcycle, it puts people at ease, in school zones. And that's what we want folks to know is we're paying attention and we're out there for them. Community engagement, organizational development, and employee wellness. Crime efforts. If you haven't noticed, Bike Patrol is back. I'm out there myself. I love it. It's also a fitness and wellness side gig. Let me tell you, I was eating on the last holiday yesterday, and then I went and got on a police bike afterwards, and I burned off my lunch. So in addition, it allows you to go up the bike path. It allows you to go down to the jetty. It allows you to hit certain areas of the city that aren't normally accessible by vehicles. Storefronts. We had some successful storefronts back when I was here in the 90s. I want to bring some back, and we're in discussions about that now. Reinstituting beat coordinators. It's something that went away in recent years. I'm going to bring it back, and I'll probably divide the city into 2 beat coordinators so people have one person in the department to contact, whether in the north end of the city or the south. Special enforcement details and special operations by patrol. An example of special operations by patrol, folks, was that 4th of July deployment. The teams got together, they went out there, and they did some enforcement with some success. A special enforcement detail could be a specific officer assigned to our tagging and gang issues. I want to increase detective staffing. I think between our social media and people in the community, they know Detective Supervisor Baltazar Tapia is very, very busy. The detective staffing increase would help break up how our investigations are handled, so one person can stay focused on their primary cases, and then the misdemeanor cases, the lesser cases, could be handled by junior detectives. Task force officer, there's several vacancies in task force in this county, a couple of them led by the sheriffs in fentanyl and violent crimes and some others. If we join those task force, 1, it gives a motivator to my personnel, it gives them another assignment to do, and 2, it brings those task force into our backyard more often when we need them. Current technology for investigations and analysis. So our current technology, just like in any police department, sometimes a new guy shows up and takes a look at it, and there's probably more you can do with that technology. And anybody who's worked in a field that has technology, there's untouched areas that may not be used on the current technology. I want to tap into that. Technology for investigations. So there is some technology out there that could make Detective Supervisor Tapia, Detective Miranda, and all the detectives today a little easier. There's systems out there that can take 12 hours of video, and you can put some specifics into the software, and then it will reduce it down to about 12 minutes of images, and you get to go through 12 minutes instead of watching it for 12 hours. There's stuff out there we just need to see what we can get our hands on, which is so many times I'll be coming back in front of you and probably asking for it. There's also some more technology I can put into place with the team to keep our folks in the field more on patrol. I want to increase our reserve officer unit. It's down to the lowest that I've ever seen it. I want to get it back up. I was a reserve myself. I donated 2,000 or 1,000 plus hours a year my first 2 years in the city working for free, and I loved it. It was better than Disneyland when I was a young officer. You couldn't get rid of me. So I think we can find some more reserves out there that want to be in 2 nights a weekend and help out. And then I'd love to bring back canine officers for a variety of reasons. They're a tool. There's stuff that they can provide us in the community. And then the big side benefit is it's a motivator for my officers. We have a small department, and I want to make sure we motivate my younger officers to stay because it's an awesome city and it's a great department. Traffic, motor officer. I have been watching council meetings for over 2 years, listening to traffic concerns from Surfside up to Volker. Every day there was traffic concerns today. Every day there's traffic concerns brought up. There's traffic concerns. I met with the school district. There's traffic concerns. The folks specializing in that is motor officers, and a motorcycle is a tool that can be utilized to curb your traffic behavior. It doesn't mean they need to go out and write 40 tickets a day. Anybody sees a motor officer sitting there with a radar gun, like Bobby's already getting scared. He's already said that. The motor, it's going to slow you down, and it does. Off-duty police officers slow down when you see, because you know what the guy's there for. So the motor officer is a great tool to use to specialize in traffic enforcement. I can use it with the current employees or current number of staffing I have. And again, it gives another motivator for my team. Directed traffic enforcement for existing patrol shifts. So we've done some things where we're targeting certain things like sunset hours and evenings, maybe down at the beaches when we hear concerns about tires screeching, cars possibly racing. There's strategies we use up on Channels Boulevard. There's strategies they use in the school zones. So we just discuss them as a team, and that's how we're deploying our shifts depending on the hours. New training for patrol officers on strategies and trends. So I can send some of my younger officers to some really good schools that are out there. Some of them are free, and they can spend a day learning how to look for things on a car that may indicate it's a vehicle racer. So we might be able to curb some of the behaviors on stops prior to the behaviors that we're looking for. So there's and certain trends on how to approach the car racers and the things that are going on. The traffic operations and task forces is also, the county's got a couple of task forces out there for the racers and some of the other current traffic concerns, and we could join those. I could send my motor and a traffic sergeant to go support them in their efforts, and then we could bring them here to our city too, because you're on a task force. Utilizing resources, somebody brought up the traffic trailers before. Councilmember Hernandez did this is like the brilliant work of the team. This is, Henry Montalongo is one of the creative people behind the scenes for us, and he loves to take those trailers out. He used them for informing the public and curbing everything from no dogs on the beach to fireworks to speeding, and I appreciate the folks on my team. So that's where this is coming from. Community engagement. I mentioned the beat coordinators and what I would like to do for them. It also helps to do some crime analysis and focus on specific problems in neighborhoods. I talked about the bike patrol. So bike patrol isn't just a crime fighting tool. It's going back to the 90s when Ken Dobie and I were the first 2 bike patrol people in the city. We realized pretty quick it's not just a crime fighting tool, it's a great community engagement. When I'm on the beach, about every 3rd or 4th person comes up to me or rides slow by me going down to the lighthouse. Even when I slow roll Lot A, the beach, somebody wants to talk, or they're like, hey, when do we get bikes, And I said, well, we've had them, we just brought them back. Take it at sunset. I do love to do a sunset ride, maybe through Hueneme Bay. Everybody's out walking their dog. I get so much one-on-one contact, and they get one-on-one time with their chief. Now, you're gonna take a handful of officers and send them out there, and people are gonna get one-on-one time with all their patrol folks. Events like, I wanna increase our Explore program. I'm very proud of that program. I've said it before, and I'll say it again because I'm proud of it. It's an incredible program. We didn't have one when I started here in the 90s. I initiated that program in 1997, and some of the folks of our first Explorers are now veteran employees here and very successful members of this community. It is an awesome program. I want to get it as strong as we can, and I'm proud of the personnel in this department and this city that have helped maintain that program in the time I was gone. And I'm really proud to see how they grew it from where I left it and got it huge. And now our goal is to keep it, maintain it, and get it bigger. But there's some great people behind the scenes on that. Events like National Night Out, you were out here for our first National Night Out in years. I thought it was very successful. I appreciate the community engagement. I was glad to buy everybody's dinner that night. Tacos are great, they're never bad. So we want to see more community engagement events like that. I'd like to bring the volunteer program back, and except I want to do it on blast even more. I got some ideas for using them not just inside the station, but outside the station. Youth programs. I didn't just stop with Explore programs. There's so many other youth programs out there. I would love to get our Cops and Jocks program back in this community. It gave us a great outreach on the high schools. There's some other youth programs. Kevin will see me at the Guppy events. And there's more we can do, and there's people who want to help. So it's going to be some great partnerships with community. Diversion, we got to work a little closer with the county's juvenile diversion program and see where we can handle juvenile diversion before it even gets to the county here on our PD level. Parent projects, sometimes bringing folks in for a half day or a whole day and having them talk with our officers about signs and indicators of things to look for in behavior will go a long way in the future. So I'd like to do some of those. And a school officer. We haven't had a school assigned regular school officer collateral assignment in years. I was the first in the 90s. I want to see that come back because it was successful. And then homeless engagement is under our community engagement. So I want to increase our homeless liaison efforts with some collateral assistance, and that's going to involve allowing some of our other personnel who haven't been a homeless liaison officer to start working with the homeless liaison officer. And then the department-wide training is going to change up a little from where it was in the past to more frequent. And I kind of want, you know, my joke with every officer in the field in a small police department is they're an army of one. So I want to make sure that not only are they really good at catching catalytic converter thieves, dealing with racers, working radar, but also that they can provide the same direction and services to a person who's homeless that my HLO could also do. So organizational development, succession planning. I don't want to see the next chief come from the outside, folks. I want us to take in consideration the folks we have in this department that are incredible, brilliant, dedicated people. But the best thing you get from people inside is they take ownership of this city and they take ownership of this department. And that's what we want. They care about our residents. They care about our businesses. So there's a lot of work I need to do in the next few years. Some of that's going to be dividing up collateral assignments for supervisors. In the past, we've had maybe one handling the majority of them as a sergeant. I have to divide those up so everybody's getting the development experience. I take existing positions that I have with my current staffing numbers and promoting an admin sergeant and promoting, getting us back to 2 police commanders, which is what builds police chiefs. Somehow we lost the second commander spot over the years. I want to bring the second one back. New collateral assignments for officers. I mentioned the motor, canine, bike patrol, volunteer coordinator, and schools officer. That's just some. These are things that keep our younger officers motivated, keep them here from going to bigger places because we can give them a variety of assignments, and it builds on their supervisory ability and organizational development. And cross-training assignments for all my staff, including my civilian staff, not just the sworn. We're talking civilian staff that could actually work in each other's units and help records and supporting dispatch, everybody supporting the front counter, property and evidence, supporting each of the other units. It's possible. You just got to pave the way. Employee wellness. So my background all over the state for about 15, 20 years now has been employee wellness, and it's huge. A happy community will be filled with happy police officers. And my thing is, happy police employees build a happy community. You want compassionate, respectful police employees dealing with your public when you call them to the house. So with that, that means we have to do our job as a management team and as a city to make sure we are looking out for their emotional well-being, their physical well-being, and their mental well-being. So there's a lot of things I want to put in place. I have a history of working on things like this, and I think we can be very successful because I have a lot of a lot of buy-in already from the team, which would involve physical health campaigns, fitness, mobility, nutrition. Like I said, mental, emotional health campaigns, mindfulness training. I can get some of my oldest, toughest cops to potentially do a mindfulness training. Team retreats, and the big thing is place. We remodel places so they look better and they look professional. I'm working on some stuff in my police department and everything from my fleet and making the cars look good. Thank God for Public Works, Brian, and some of the folks in Public Works. They help us keep our cars running, clean, and looking good. But also my building, they need to walk into a professional, comfortable environment. We're remodeling the dispatch center. My poor dispatchers have been spending 2 years in a temporary facility. When they go back into their new one, I'm going to make sure they have the amenities that they need for a comfortable work environment. And we want to partner with the other city departments and community members when we do some wellness stuff, i.e. the city manager just did yoga on the beach. So even some police employees went out there. Good job. Got them out there. Good job. So we will do some other, if I get a really good speaker on wellness, I'd love to bring some of the folks over from the other city departments to sit in on them. I just presented a lot of stuff to you. A lot of these things, several of these items, I'm going to be bringing back in front of you in the future. So we can discuss those as I bring them. But you understand, I am fortunate to be back here, I think at a good time. There's a great team in place. I plan to show you that team over the next few years. We have a very supportive council. We have a good leadership in our city manager. And above all, since I've been back, one thing I missed was our community support in the city is out of control. I've had friends come up from LA area agencies and spend a day up here with us, and they're pointing out how obvious it is that the community appreciates their police department and their city. So only good things to come, folks. Only good things to come. I can't say enough about my team, so.
Thank you, Chief Federico, for your presentation. Are there any questions?
For the presentation. A lot of great stuff. It'll probably take a while to get to the point to where we can implement, or the police department can implement these things. I did have a couple of, no really questions, but I just want to point out a couple of things. So in hearing about the storefronts, staffing, new staff, what seems to me is new staffing. You said task force officer, increase reserve officer, and then K-9 officers. So it sounds to me that that we're talking about additional staffing, city manager?
One of the things I appreciate about the chief is every conversation we have ends with one of us using the phrase budget neutral, and people are probably sick of it already. But we've had the discussions. One of the challenges that actually kind of permeates through both of the chief's presentations is the budget was set before the chief got here. The budget was set before I got here. We sort of inherited it. I think to some extent, the chief mentioned, looking at overtime closely. It's because the budget this year reduced overtime for police officers. The chief and I are looking at that, trying to look where we can find savings in one area to supplement another. We're looking at collateral assignments that can be done without adding additional costs. And we're looking at the areas where we really think it'll be the best bang for the buck, and where we can adjust things and identify where, when we have resources, where we should put them. So I think the concern is well noted, that, that's a big plan, but I think the chief and I have talked about it nonstop, and I really appreciate that we both are aware of the budget challenges. We plan to sit down on each of these and talk through how it can be done, how we can most efficiently do it, and we'll bring those items back. I mentioned the red curb and the traffic discussion. One of the topics that's going to kind of be pulled into that is some traffic enforcement and how we can do that effectively with the staff we have. So those are good it's a good thing to be aware of, and we are aware of it. And we will, when we present them, we'll talk about what we can do with no added cost, what we can do by adjusting things, and where we would recommend making modifications. And then I do want to just reiterate the chief's point about succession training. I think the chief and I both are very grateful that we had the opportunity to come to Port Hueneme, but both of us have said our goal is that the next people in our roles are internal candidates, people who've been here and who've worked with the city. And we want to plan that that's the next people in these positions will be homegrown talent. And so for us, we are talking about really prioritizing that as part of our overall philosophy. So, anyway, back to you, Chief, if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, I was here when we had much smaller budget to work with, and we made incredible things happen. We actually have a more flexible budget than we did back in the day. And you hear some of the things we started with less budget to work with. We have more budget to work with. So let's give it time and see what we pull off. It's not adding positions right now. We're using what we have.
Right. I did have a closing statement I'd like to make. I feel like I'm on a jury or court somewhere. I did just want to say, so yeah, moving forward, strategy, plans, great. But I just don't want us as a city to lose track of currently what are the issues that we might be experiencing now to make sure we're dealing with those as well. And before we look too far out.
Yeah, and there's 3 months of crime stats sitting on my desk right now, and that's part of our analysis of what we're looking at. But we could use our technology better to put that out to our folks, but that's literally why some things on this plan got moved further out, because we were able to start bike patrol in weeks. And so there's certain things we want to move based on that.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you for the presentation. Really appreciate it. One of the things I think I've discovered is that your plan and the things you talked about mean that you're more visible. And I believe that I've seen a more visible police department since you came on, and I think that's great. In fact, just yesterday when I came home from the beach, barbecuing all day, having a community barbecue, here comes Chief Frederico on a bicycle out of Miranda Park. And I think that's great. And I've seen the interaction, and I think all that interaction is going to pay big dividends down the road. So I think it's going to take some time, and I really appreciate the things that you're doing. I think the visibility is already paying off. There was a time where they would park a unused police vehicle out in front of City Hall. And if there is an unused police vehicle, I would suggest putting it back out in front of City Hall, because people were like, whoa, there's a police officer, and they'd slow down, you know. But I think with the community discussion that we're going to bring forward here, knowing you, how I know you, and how I've seen you operate, I think it's a great opportunity to hear from folks, hear what their concerns are, and then try to make real progress in addressing them. So, and one other thing, when it comes to technology, we were told a couple years ago when, for example, when the camera went in down at the pier, that, oh, this tool is going to do X, Y, and Z for us. And I'm not sure if that system is operating, if it's working, is it being monitored? But it seems to me that, you know, using the tools that we have in place to their maximum ability might really help a lot.
Yes.
And so, anyways, I just really appreciate the attitude that you brought to our department. I think it's very visible. I think it's positive, and I think wellness, taking care of the officers, is super important. You know, because we know that as a police officers, you deal with some pretty difficult things, and being a tough guy can only work for so long, or a tough woman. You have to, you know, have a mechanism to de-stress and live life joyfully. So thank you for everything you're doing. I look forward to the future.
Thank you, Chief, again for your report. And I echo the supporting comments of my fellow council members. Your plans are ambitious. They're going to come with a price tag. So I hope that you, and between you and the city manager, you can figure out how to get to that budget neutral place. Canines, storefront, motor officers not only come with price tags, they come with liability. So those are things that we all have to be concerned of. I'm not so sure as a council member and as a city council, that I'm ready to say that we want to hire a city manager that's internal. I think that's something that's going to be left to the city council. Um, So if those are the thoughts, maybe we should have some further discussion on that. Because there are some benefits of going outside. So I just wanted to add that. And when you talked about getting feedback from the community and from your team within the department, I recall that when you presented here to the city council, you raised some of the concerns that we had and some of the things we were looking for in a police chief that you responded to. And one of them was Neighborhood Watch. I didn't hear anything in your presentation about Neighborhood Watch. Do you have any plans to bring Neighborhood Watch back or something similar to that, which hopefully could be budget neutral? But
Yeah, actually, and it can be, and it is under community engagement. I didn't put all the programs up there, but there's programs up there. We're actually working on one right now. I'd love to bring them up again. Henry Montalongo is working with a couple of folks. I know former mayor and council member Rich Rollins is working with him on one, but yes, Neighborhood Watch is definitely in the plans. It's already underway.
great, good to hear. And then I'm glad you mentioned crime stats because we do expect to hear at least quarterly your reports on crime stats. We missed those since Chief Salinas left. And then vacancies. Do you have any vacancies right now that
Yes.
you're needing to fill?
Yeah, we have a couple of officer vacancies.
We lost a detective, right? Did you lose it? Was Nora a
Yeah,
detective?
I inherited 3 people leaving, 1 medical retirement, 1 to a higher promotion, another organization, and 1 retirement to go be a detective in another retirement system. So with those, thankfully, we have Bob Albertson. He's on top of the personnel promoting. We're already flying. We're also trying to hire a CSO right now.
So you're planning on filling those vacancies or
Yes, but I should,
changing
yes,
the staffing?
definitely fill them, but in the meantime, we're saving money on those 3 positions and still do you see how that works? We're actually saving that money on the 3 to the end of the year. So
Right.
we'll
but
balance
There's
that.
also the service level too that you suffer if you don't fill those positions, right? So you want to be careful of that.
Right, so
Okay.
our minimal staffings are all there, always.
All right, thank you. That's all I have.
Mayor Pro Tem?
I don't have any questions. I just have comments that I love hearing the things that you're doing because I know they're going to be beneficial. I think you have a good pulse on the city. I think your officers, your staff, and the management all have a good pulse on the city and what needs to be done. We have a lot of years invested in this community and a lot of experts that understand what the community is about. And I think the fact that you're utilizing everyone and bringing them in to engage everyone's opinion on what's going to work best for this community is the best way you can go about implementing these changes. And I know you have great staff behind you that support you. I know they are excited about these changes and the things that are going to be happening and all the different additions that are going to be. So I'm just looking forward to what is going to happen. I know it's going to be great. Thank you.
And thank you for your presentation. I like your great ideas, and when the time's right, I know you'll bring them back, and then we'll decide on them. Thank you for your presentation, Chief Federico. Thank you.
I do have one last thing. I was approached just prior to my presentation to hear something from the employees. The employee union president sitting right here wants to speak a couple comments on my presentation. Mike Hamrick.
Good. Hi. Thanks to all of you for allowing me the opportunity to speak. So I'm I am the POA president. For those of you that don't know, I was elected a couple years ago to represent the members of the police department. And with that, it's a job that I take very, very seriously. And like the chief had mentioned, the investment that he's made into the employees, that's the same investment I make into the employees. So I do appreciate the opportunity to speak to each and every one of you. From a historical standpoint, I've been a law enforcement officer for 30 plus years, almost 31 years. I've worked for multiple chiefs, and I've worked for in a team environment my whole life. Being a former athlete, now a coach myself for many, many years, 40 years, 40 plus years involved in athletics. I understand the team concept. I understand team dynamics. I understand what good teamwork is and what bad teamwork is. And so with that, I'm speaking on behalf of mostly myself, because I have to be cognizant of the fact that I may not share and represent each and every one of the members of the agency. However, I will go out on a limb and say that a majority, if not all, do echo the same sentiments that I'm going to present to you guys this evening. As you've known in the past, I didn't really prepare anything to speak on, because I don't think that if I prepare something, it comes off as genuine or with the same humbleness that I have for being given this opportunity. But I'd like to say that the chief presented several of his 5 focus areas. Misty kind of stole some of my my thunder with her comments, things that I wanted to address. And the 2 areas that I think are important for the council and the city manager to understand is that right now the agency is in a good spot. It's in a very good position. And I say that because having that experience, maybe even an expert in a sense of teamwork and chemistry of how a team works and the dynamics of that, I'll go out on a limb and say that I think that right now we are in a very, very good spot as an agency. The chief mentioned that some of the programs will motivate some of our younger officers to want to further their careers, enhance their ability to be leaders in the organization someday. But it's also rejuvenated a lot of tenured employees like myself that have 30, 31 years that can retire now, that are looking at retirement opportunities, but are deciding, well, maybe I stick around and be part of the leadership team in the future, be part of the succession planning that he's trying to implement. That's very important for somebody like myself who feels that I have a lot to offer. Even now at 55 years old, I still have a lot to offer in a form of leadership. So it's rejuvenated myself, and it's rejuvenated some of our older tenured employees, and but also motivated a lot of our younger employees as well. Speaking from experience and working patrol with a lot of our younger officers, we have a huge disparity gap right now. And I think it's important that the city understands that we have to have that succession planning in place, because there is going to be an exodus at some point within the next year, 2, 3, 4 years of some of our tenured senior employees. And they're going to have somebody in the leadership role that's going to be able to continue to motivate them, provide them opportunities to enrich their lives, which also ultimately enriches the community, right? And so I think it's important to have that leadership. And right now, Chief Federico is that leader that we have, and I'm excited about it. The membership's excited about it, and like I said, this is mostly my comments, but I think I echo the same sentiments of the employees. Another area too that I think is important that maybe wasn't totally captured in the chief's presentation is his ability to communicate and value each and every one of us. I saw the chief come in. I don't know that there's a day he has not been here. I'm here a lot because of my work, also because of some staffing issues. And I think every day I've been here, I've seen him every day. He has definitely invested in the city. You know that he's an invested member of the community, but he's also invested in each and every one of us. And to share some examples, he came out and rode personally on my shift. Now, I do get some FaceTime with the chief, but he rode with some of our younger officers. What that tells me as somebody that's been a coach for a long time is that he is invested in his people. And when you invest in your people, you understand their goals and you understand their objectives, and you can also implement your own goals and objectives for them. And when you value them, they want to come to work, their work product goes up, and they're motivated, and that transitions into them being positive and how they address issues in the community. Whether it's crime fighting, whether it's solving a neighborhood dispute, traffic-related issues, or a variant of different maybe crimes that we address or problems that we address in the community. He's taken the time to communicate with each and every one of us and allowed the employee to feel valued. And for the first time in a long time in my career, that's welcoming. That's welcoming to have someone that has invested in us personally. And so I'm excited to see where that goes in the future. And I know, I like I said, mentioning that same sentiment from my my teammates. Communication-wise, he's communicated with us his vision, his goals. This is something that we hear. This was nothing new to me to see his focus areas because he's constantly discussing it. And I think as a coach, that's a good leader or a head coach implementing his ideas on his employees and staff, preparing them for that opportunity to have a motor, to have a canine, to have collateral assignments. It prepares them for that opportunity, what's expected of them. And he's planting the seeds for the department to move forward. So with that, I do want to thank all of you for allowing me the opportunity to speak for a few minutes. We have a very good opportunity to continue to move this department forward, and I'm very excited for it. And I think if you asked, just took a poll of the other team members that I work with, they would say the same thing. So with that, thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to speak. Welcome back, and look forward to working with you for hopefully a few more years. So, all right, have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. We will now move on to the consent calendar. We will consider items on the consent calendar, which will be enacted in one motion unless a council member has a request to remove an item for discussion. I would like to remove, Kevin, I have to remove number 8, right? If I'm not going to vote for it. Okay, so I'm making a motion to approve the consent calendar minus agenda item number 8.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously.
All right, and item number 8 is authorization for teacher leave reimbursement associated with out-of-state travel for myself, Mayor Bobby Martinez. I don't have to leave for this one, right?
No, under the Brown Act, because it's a consent agenda item, you can stay on the dais, but you may not participate. So I would recommend that Mayor Pro Tem Perez read the item.
I'd like to move approval. Item 8.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, and let the record reflect that the vote is 4-0 with Mayor Martinez abstaining.
There aren't any public hearings tonight, but we do have a couple business items. Item number 11, Citizen Advisory Commission Amendment to Bylaws and Revision of Purpose and Functions. Will staff please present the report?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And I have two just simple slides that I'm gonna pull up. Thank you. Okay, so the Citizen Advisory Committee item is on the agenda today with the recommendation to approve a list of topics for the Citizen Advisory Commission to review and to approve an amendment to the bylaws to set the council chambers as the commission's regular meeting location. Some quick background, the Citizen Advisory Commission was created in 2018 with 5 members. Bylaws were prepared and approved in September of 2020. Since that time, the Citizen Advisory Commission had reviewed essentially 5 topics: the Wainimi Heroes, Historic Preservation and Cultural Heritage Policy, applications to honor the heroes, allocations from the Community Benefit Fund, Citizen Advisory Commission bylaws, and the legislative program of the city. This year, the council and the commission both expressed interest in holding future commission meetings at council chambers. Previously, the commission meetings were held at the Orvine S. Carpenter Community Center. The CAC had a meeting on July 10th where they voted to amend their bylaws to meet at the council chambers. We brought that recommendation forward. We recommend approving that and also approving providing direction to the staff to record their meetings and post their meetings on the website moving forward. To me, our thought was this is a good public transparency measure of this is the city's commission. The city's commission's business should be held at the chamber where the public can participate and be recorded and on the website so the public can review those meetings just like a council meeting. We estimate about $1,000 of staff time annually to do so, which is fairly minimal and can be accomplished with existing staff. And yeah, I think I need the arrows. Thank you. Thanks. And then, as mentioned, so the bylaws was the second item. The first recommendation was to set the topics for the Citizen Advisory Commission. Those topics that we are recommending include the existing topics such as the heroes and historic preservation policy items, the allocations from the Community Benefit Fund, and the legislative program. But we're also recommending, we're looking to recommend topics that typically we get a lot of public feedback on, a lot of public comment, with the idea of just using the opportunity to have more public outreach, more public engagement. So we're recommending including city-sponsored large-scale events as topics for the CAC to provide feedback and input on, public art projects, parks and recreation-based capital projects. That's a topic we tend to get a lot of comments on, things like parks improvements and things like that. And the amendment and creation of master plan documents, which always have some sort of public outreach element. So we've recommended including those items in the set list of topics for the Citizen Advisory Commission to meet. And taken together, the purpose is essentially trying to provide clarity, transparency to both the public, the commission, the council, staff, about what the role of the Advisory Commission is, and also allowing that interaction and public engagement with the commission. So we recommend approving those 2 items.
Does anyone on council have any questions? Councilmember Gama?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, City Manager. I would hope to see a meeting schedule. I don't know how many meetings, but I think if we put a schedule together, then we could work towards that schedule. And then I think I just love the concept that we're going to use, and this is what it should have always been used for, is to bring the public in on targeted topics, get as much feedback as possible, and then get this information to the council to help us make better and more fulfilling decisions. So that's the only thing I would like to see is if we could put a meeting schedule. I don't know how many meetings a year we should shoot for, but maybe it's something, I don't know if we could talk about that tonight, but maybe it would be a really good tool, because then, for example, like, when you have a meeting every Tuesday of every 3rd month or whatever the recommendation would be, but I think that would help the effective and efficient.
Yeah, that's the bylaws do include in the bylaws how meetings can be called. So I think we could talk about that as part of the bylaws. And if there's an idea of how we want to hold them. Right now, the bylaws state that the meetings are held quarterly. so every 3 months. And so that can be modified. But of course, the bylaws also state that council or the city manager can call additional meetings as needed. So that could also work at this time.
May, I'm sorry, but the problem, as I see it, is we haven't had quarterly meetings.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's been, we haven't had regular quarterly meetings, so,
I hear you.
okay.
Any
So-
other questions? Ms. McQueen?
This, I believe, follow up to what Council Member Gama was saying. In my mind, I don't see any concern, I don't have any concerns right now, but going down the path, I would be a little concerned about timing of, of decision-making.
Mhm.
And so, the other part would be, so when you talk about communicating with the community, right? I think there are, in some cases, and I don't know the background of all the members, but in communicating with residents, and then having to have that, one, collecting the information you need for the topic,
Mhm.
right? Two, being able to then analyze that data and get the data to who it needs to be, and then respond to the residents so that they value the process and will continue to be involved in dialogue. And so those are the kind of things that I would be somewhat concerned about, because communication on one thing is a big deal. But to communicate in a lot of different topics, you know, would be concerning for me.
Yeah. I think when I say an opportunity for communication and engagement, the thought at this point is it's another public meeting with an agenda that allows the community to see what's being talked about, come in and participate in the meeting. And so we weren't necessarily envisioning it as like a commitment to then continue that, to start a dialogue, in that way, but more as like it's an opportunity for the public to come speak to the commission and then the commission recommendation to go to council. And it's just another link in the, representation
Yeah.
process.
I'll just follow up with this then. So I think it's important that I know that decisions are not always going to be in alignment with feedback that you get from the community.
Correct.
I know that.
Mhm.
But I also want to just make sure that we remain aware that it's not just hearing the residents,
Mhm.
it's then taking information
Mhm.
and actually using it to come up with decisions that might not be yours or mine. And so I just want to make sure that we're not creating environments to collect data, and then as a city, we go do what the city decides that they want to do.
Mhm. Mhm.
Just want to make sure I put that out there.
Thank you.
Councilmember Hernandez, do
Yes,
you have a question?
Yes, I have a couple of questions. Thank you, Mayor Martinez. I echo the sentiments of Councilman Gama and Councilwoman McQueen Lejeune in the scheduling. I think that's going to be really important, in particular as it relates to the proposed allocations from the Community Benefit Fund, because my experience, and I think council might agree, that we as a city council don't have that process down now. And if we're going to create another layer of approval, the timing on how we do that, the process and the timing of how we do that is going to have to be crafted very carefully, because we don't always hear back from the committee representatives, and that's not just this year. In previous years, we haven't been that great at it in reporting back what's been discussed in these meetings with the port. So we'd have to get the information to the Citizens Advisory Commission at a certain time prior to the meeting, and then get some follow-up after the meeting. And I just I'm not sure we're ready to do that yet. So I would ask consideration in having that removed from one of their duties until we can get our schedule and our process
Did you have a
arranged.
question though, right now?
Yeah, my question is, what is the plan for how we're going to handle the community benefit fund?
Yeah, and Community Benefit Fund has been on their list of topics, but my understanding is we haven't necessarily stuck to it in the past. I think that the short answer is we're going to have to be more proactive. We're going to have to be, we will have to make sure we know the schedule for Community Benefit Fund when we're going to have that joint discussion with the port, and then we're going to have to work backwards from
Right.
there and build in a month to go to the Citizen Advisory Commission. And I think we are able to do that, but to your point, it hasn't happened in the past and it didn't happen this year. I think we were, by sort of agreeing to these topics, we were going to commit to trying to make sure that happens in the future. So,
Yeah, because I could actually see that a Citizen Advisory Commission could be utilized for interviewing nonprofits who want to receive funding, helping us with that process. The other question I had to do with the Public Arts Project, and we've been discussing the establishment and standing up of a Public Arts Commission. Would that no longer be necessary if we turned this over to the Citizens Advisory Commission?
I think, it would be up to the council. I think those are two options to proceed, whether it's keeping that within the purview of a potential arts commission, or if the council wanted to just fold that into the Citizen Advisory Commission. I think when we put this list together, there currently, as of today, is not a group that reviews public art projects. But if the council did create an arts commission, the council could say, that topic is now within
Okay.
the Arts Commission's purview.
The only caution I would say to that is that not all the members of the Community Advisory Council have experience with art.
Yeah, that's
So-
correct. And I think, one of the ideas that sometimes cities will do is when you give a committee that topic, then you'll require that one or two members of the committee have a background in art, for example. I think the CAC right now does have a committee member who does have a background in art, but I think it's just one of the 5.
Okay. So if we approve this tonight, does that mean that the Arts Commission is no longer, I've spent a lot of time working on it, collecting bylaws and researching arts commissions. Do I now just stop doing that,
No,
or?
it doesn't. So there's a couple options. Adopting this tonight doesn't have any impact on the council considering creating an arts commission. We can adopt the list and remove public art projects if the council's confident that it's moving towards an arts commission. We can adopt it as is for now and then remove it when we create a commission. Well, those are probably the clearest options. But by adopting this, it does not mean that an arts commission is not possible.
Okay.
So.
All right, great. And then my last question is, what happened to the idea of asking the CAC to do a community engagement plan? I think we've spoken about it. I've mentioned it here in this in this venue. Did that not? It didn't make the list, and I'm not sure why.
No, and I don't know that I've heard that to this point. So
Okay,
yeah, I don't have a.
but it's not too late to add something later on.
No, and something can be added tonight, or it can be added at a later date, or kind of the catch-all in our list of topics is we do note that additional topics, specific topics may be directed by the city council. So the city council could at any time say, we need a community engagement plan. We want the Citizen Advisory Commission to come back with that item. So
Okay, so my final question, has this been presented to this CAC, these list of projects? Have they weighed in on this yet?
that's a good question. Let me ask the staff liaison if these were actually talked about at the last meeting.
And the reason I ask is because they have to determine whether they feel they have the capacity and time to work on these things.
Yeah, I believe they did talk about topics. I'm just not sure if all of these topics were on the list at that point.
Simple answer, Councilmember, is no, this has not been presented. A good combination of, a good portion of the list comes directly from comments and suggestions made at the last CAC meeting. But the list in its entirety was not presented to the CAC for their.
So they still need time to kind of mull it over and.
If that's the council's wish. The enabling resolution was that the council would take action and direct the items for the CAC to review. But if it's the council's desire to have serious meetings first.
Well, that would be my recommendation. I mean, because we're placing a lot on their shoulders. I want to make sure that they feel that this is something that they can successfully accomplish.
If I may, I just think it's important to get some meetings going, get us, get in stride, get familiarity in how this CAC is going to work, because frankly, it really hasn't been utilized at all. And right, but I've heard from my appointee, it's like, when are we going to have a meeting? How come we don't have meetings? And they haven't had meetings. So again, that's why I'm hanging up on, let's have a schedule, and then let's work everything that we can through the CAC, including art, and we'll see how it goes, because the CAC may come up with a recommendation that nobody on this council supports. I don't see that happening, but it could happen. But I believe that if we start small with a couple items in the first agenda, I mean, if we put an agenda out that had all these 8 items on, I don't think that's fair to the commission. But if we give them, for example, just throwing it out there, it says city-sponsored large-scale events. Okay, so maybe we have a meeting and we give all the data to the CAC and say, okay, digest how Hueneme Beach Festival played out this year. What are the good things? What are the bad things? What do you think we should do? Where should we go into the future? I think if we start getting in the rhythm of turning over a topic and then having it come back, I think we could really make this work for us in all the different areas.
Question?
I'm just trying to promote going forward.
Does anyone have a question?
I have a question. Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Gamba just mentioned about the city-sponsored large-scale events, and he alluded to, or he stated that, give them data and have them analyze the data. Is that what that line means? And then what does 7 look like as a task?
Yeah, so for city-sponsored large-scale events, essentially what we're suggesting is reviewing the city's large-scale events such as Beach Fest. I think that's an example of, we hear tons of feedback, and oftentimes completely conflicting feedback from, one person says it should have been held this way, and another person says it should have been held this way.
Right. If you don't mind me, just
Sure.
because I want to make sure
Yeah.
I was clear at my question. So is this really about after the fact or prior to planning an event? The Citizens Advisory Team gives feedback to the planners so that they can include. So is it
Well, it's,
either or?
in this case, because it's an annual event, it would be both. It's after the, so we just had Beach Fest, so after the event, the CAC's next meeting is October 9th. So that is one of the topics, to the point of, we wouldn't have all these items on their agenda, but that would probably be on the first one. And it would be reviewing the last Beach Fest, reviewing some of the details, costs, resources, et cetera, and then giving the CAC the first opportunity to receive public feedback and to provide input from the public and the CAC, then that can then go to staff and council. So,
And what would number 7 look like? as a
so
task?
7 is in particular specific, large-scale Parks and Rec capital projects, and I'll give like an example of Destination Playground right now. And I would say, coming in as a new person, talking to people, I've heard 1,000 ideas of what the playground should be, where it should be, how it should, what it should include. And that's like an example because it's been talked about for years, but there hasn't really been that full, vetting and discussion. That in the future, when we have a project like that, the CAC can be the first round of public input, public feedback, and make some recommendations. And so it would be sort of on that, whenever we'd have a new large-scale parks project coming, having the CAC be the first round.
One additional comment in response to some of the questions that were asked. I just want to be clear that the commission is advisory to council. So there were comments before about information received and information flow with the community and perhaps advice given to event planners. The items presented to the CAC would be presented for their feedback and community input at those meetings for items that would then be presented to the city council with the CAC recommendations. So I just wanted to make that point of clarification.
Any questions, Mayor Pro Tem? All right. May we hear public comments regarding this item, please?
First public comment is from Stephen Auclair.
See the city council. Oh, thank you. I'll start over. Mayor Martinez, Mayor Pro Tem Perez, it's good to be here tonight. I'm currently serving in my 5th year with the Citizen Advisory Commission. This would make me, I believe, the longest serving member of that group from its inception, I think. And so I am so happy to see this come forward. I think it's the first time a comprehensive list has come forward. And I will say we have actually been meeting, Councilmember Gama. We meet quarterly now. That communication has increased drastically, and I'm really happy to see that. I really want to thank the deputy city manager and the city clerk. They've just been exceptional at staffing these meetings. As somebody who staffs meetings during my day job, it's just something on top of another project, another thing that they're doing. And so I think it can't go without note that they have just really contributed well. They've met the commissioners where they are. So, when we ask a question, they respond in a way that is appropriate. And I've really appreciated that. And they've treated us with dignity, care, and respect. I will note that this list is a wonderful list. I will say it reflects nearly every comment I've heard over the last 5 years from both commissioners, from residents, and frankly, recommendations I've made to at least the last 2 city managers, both of which frankly were met with great resistance. So I'm happy to see that this is coming forward, and I hope that the city council enables the commission and enables staff to collaborate with the commission. I think it will set our city apart in the use of this commission. We're kind of rare in that we don't have a planning commission and this commission and that commission. But I think this could be a really good model and a really interesting model to get others involved. So with that, and for those reasons, I really urge a yes vote on staff recommendation. Support this, see how it goes. If commissioners feel like it's overwhelming, cycling off a commission when it takes up a big change and steps forward, that's normal. That's a healthy part of a commission. And I think this is really us stepping forward to some real substantive material. So again, I urge a yes vote on staff recommendation. Give the staff a chance, give the commission a chance. And I think this is going to be wonderful. So again, thank you to the staff for preparing this, and I urge a yes vote. Trust the staff, trust the commission. Thank you. They're your appointees. Thank you.
Next.
We have Rich Rollins.
Hi. I've never been a strong advocate of the Community Advisory Commission. And part of that is because I've worked in a number of different cities that they've had multiple commissions where you got more involvement from the community, you got involvement from the people who had the focus in that particular area. We were mentioning the Planning Commission. There's a lot of things up that we need to talk about planning. recreation and parks, all the projects and stuff like that. That's a huge area. And so while in the past, the tendency has been really not to give the Community Advisory Commission anything of real meat to discuss, what we're doing now, which is, I guess, a good step in one respect, but we're giving them almost a deluge of different programs and topics to get involved in. And when I first came here, they had things like an Older Americans Commission. They had a Recreation and Parks Commission. In other cities, they've had an Arts Commission. They've had a Planning Commission. And there's a lot of big topics that, there are a lot of big subjects that you have that you really need the input from people who are really involved in those particular areas that can give expertise. When it was first presented, this was before I was on the council, the idea of getting rid of all of these commissions and that this will be kind of the nirvana of commissions where we'll have all different committees in this particular area, really didn't happen. And I'm a real strong advocate, whether you call them commissions or committees or whatever, that you have focused grassroots committees on these different areas, on people who that's their interest, that's their, it affects them more, and they can provide more input to those different subjects. That's just basically, I think, I have a feeling, the fact that you're meeting regularly, great. I remember, frankly, the old council wanted, I mean, even before my council, they wanted to give them very, very limited things to get their teeth involved in. And now we're giving them a whole lot of stuff to get involved in. And unless you develop multiple committees on these different areas and stuff like that, I think it's going to be overwhelming. But I do push the idea of having more commissions in that focused area. My thoughts.
I have one question, if I may. Mayor Martinez,
Yes.
who will set the agenda? It's my understanding that the city manager would set the agenda. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
And so then I would imagine we would be particularly interested in not overwhelming the commission.
Yes, we, like I said, I think the first meeting on October 9th, if this is approved, we would have it's a good opportunity to have the debrief on Beach Fest. I don't anticipate other items being on that agenda. There's more items in the future, but we would try to manage that for them.
Excellent. Thank you.
All right. Are there any more public comments?
We do have one written public comment. When I first heard that the Citizens Advisory Council was being formed years ago, I was excited because I believe there should be more community input into city affairs. However, for years, their role was unclear and output unknown. I'm pleased to know that they will now have specific assignments and their meetings will be transparent and accessible to the public. I look forward to seeing the committee, staff, and council collaborate to create a city that values citizen ideals and translate them into constructive outcomes. Regards, Joan Tharp. And
Okay. The recommendation is to approve the attached list of topics for Citizen Advisory Commission review, analysis, and advisory recommendation, and approve an amendment to Citizen Advisory Commission bylaws to establish the City Council Chamber as the commission's regular meeting location. May I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Are there any other motions? Okay, I'll invite discussion of the motion. Would anybody have any comments?
The city manager mentioned, thought came to me later that in most cases, these things are going to be working in connection. Like the voice of my appreciation to the CAC. And I think I'm currently the president, vice chair, for speaking to us. Thank you.
I just wanted, can I make a comment? I just wanted to get some clarification that this list of projects or tasks, that there's some flexibility to maybe remove one later on if we find out that it doesn't work, or add more later on if we find that there's something more appropriate for them to to handle.
Yep, for sure. It's always modifiable by the city council.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Madam Clerk, can we please take a vote?
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously.
All right, moving on to number 12, Capital Improvement Plan and Budget Impact Overview. Will staff please present the report?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So I do have a few slides, mostly just because this can be I've discovered that this can be a huge topic that I can talk about for hours, as some of our finance team found out in the last couple weeks. But I will try to keep this presentation kind of short and sweet. We had started this with the intent of looking at the city's capital improvement plan and looking at the projects. This year, when the budget was adopted, the CIP was not thoroughly reviewed as part of the budget adoption process. And the plans for 23-24 were sort of rolled over into this year's budget. But projects that had started in the 5-year span from 2021 to 2026, projects that hadn't been completed in 21, 22, and 23 were all sort of bundled together in 2023. And my immediate reaction looking at the list was just that it was a huge list, and that it wasn't a list that was realistic based on what our staff can accomplish in a year or what we have the funding to accomplish in a year. So we started off looking at the CIP document and trying to kind of take a look and make some recommendations about what projects were realistic to accomplish this year and what projects we would recommend moving to another year. And so the CIP, or the 5-year plan for capital projects, things like our streets maintenance, parks improvements, water, wastewater plants, city facility improvements. Again, we started off just reviewing those and prioritizing those. And as we started to dig into those plans, we started to see some potential budget impacts and some budget concerns that I felt it was important to highlight for the council and the public. One of the key points, and I think this was illustrated in the budget hearings, but it wasn't really fully discussed, is that we are in the middle of a trend of declining unassigned fund balance. Unassigned fund balance is essentially the savings account that the city has that we can use for any purpose. It's the money that we can use for projects. It's the money we can use if we do want to add, specific staff, anything like that. It's the money that we have that can be used for really any good or any governmental purpose. And the city several years ago built up a large unassigned fund balance. But as we looked at the budget, there's a definite trend of that unassigned fund balance declining. And if we were to map out the next couple years with the existing CIP, we are on a trend where the unassigned fund balance would go away. We'd essentially be at zero at the end of the 5-year CIP plan. And I think that the immediate reaction I heard from some people is, well, that's okay if we built up a pot of money and we said this is going to be used for projects, and there was a plan to do that. But one of the problems is that our existing annual budget doesn't include any funding for CIP other than using unassigned fund balance. And it doesn't include any funding for things like prepaying our pension debt. It doesn't include funding, even just funding to build up equipment replacement reserves, vehicle replacement reserves. There's typically, different reserve accounts that you build up so that you have money to buy things when you need them. And our current budget doesn't include those things. So this unassigned fund balance is how the city has paid for those things for the past several years, but there is no plan currently to keep paying for those things a couple years out. And so when you see this unassigned fund balance declining from $16 million in 21-22 to $7.9 million at the end of next year, and then, as I said, potentially to zero in the year or two following that, it typically means that the budget is not truly balanced. And so we went back and we looked at the budget, and we took the information from the budget presentation that was presented this year. And I'm showing it a little bit simpler because the original chart was several columns, several rows, and maybe a little bit tougher to digest. But we essentially took the revenues that we anticipate and the expenses we anticipate. And the way those had been illustrated previously is that showed, for example, in 22-23, 25.9 million in revenues and 25.7 in expenses, which left a surplus of $240,000. But then there was more columns with more expenses. One-time expenses was one category, things like purchase of property, or I think we also made a $350,000 grant to the library that year. And capital improvement projects. The projects that we were completing were coming out of the total after we had a balanced budget. And so showing that on this chart, the actual budget in 22-23 was a $1.4 million deficit after accounting for all of those items. And again, it speaks to why good practice would be to have a fund, like a separate CIP fund, for example, where the city is committing a certain amount to the CIP and truly trying to balance the budget, including a CIP fund. Instead of, in our case, we don't have a CIP fund, we're just spending the savings that built up over the years. And so I mentioned in the report, and I think on this slide, that it's not unusual to have a year like that. And as a city, we can say, this year we want to get these priority projects done so we know that we're going to, fund our CIP more this year. But if you look at our budget, we actually have a trend of doing that. This year, after accounting for capital improvement projects, it would be a $2.6 million deficit. And next year, it would be a $1 million deficit. And at this point, that's without any one-time expenses, any property purchases or anything like that, which the city was looking at potentially doing. And so that would only further that deficit in each of those 2 years. So again, our unassigned fund balance is dropping and our budget is not balanced if we are doing CIP and if we have one-time expenses. And the problem with that, the one-time expenses, the argument could be that those are optional. We could just say we're not going to have any one-time expenses this year. It's easier said than done, but it's possible. But capital improvement projects are not optional. And we shouldn't, almost the way we've been setting up our budget, it's giving the impression that those are optional and we can stop doing them when we use our unassigned fund balance. But you can't. That means we stop paving our streets when we use up our unassigned fund balance, or we stop fixing things at the park. And those are not really optional things. Those are things we need to start planning for and including in the budget. So with all that in mind, this item that was initially looking at what staff resources we had to complete the CIP turned into kind of the dual purpose, which is, it's actually what a CIP should do, is looking at staff resources and budget resources. Those are the two realities that we have to live in as we decide what projects we're going to do this year. And so we revised the CIP looking at those two things to try to start making a reduction to that deficit and to start reducing the impact on our unassigned fund balance. We put together a revised 5-year CIP. One key point, I know it's just a formatting thing, but the revised CIP shows at the top of each year and at the bottom of each year what the fund balance is to start the year and what the fund balance is at the end of the year. And that's something that it doesn't appear we've ever done, but we should do that fundamentally moving forward. Because one of the first questions when we're talking about these projects should be, what can we afford? And there was no way to see on the prior CIPs how much money we had to start and how much money we'd have if we actually did all the projects that we said we'd do. Now, by adding that, the third year, or the third, we're calling that the future years because what would have been the third year under the prior plan reveals that 3 of our fund balances would actually be in the negative if we actually did all the projects that were on the plan. Our gas tax fund, our general fund, and our water fund would all be totally depleted if we completed every project in the plan. So for that reason, in the revised plan, we have this fiscal year, next fiscal year, and then the third year is now titled future year projects because those aren't going to be realistic to accomplish in just the third year. Those are going to have to be prioritized and reprioritized as we move forward. And so we've put together the revised CIP. We've made adjustments. Those adjustments actually result in about almost $1 million reduction and almost $1 million less of our unassigned fund balance to kind of slow that trend, that downward trend of our unassigned fund balance. But what it means is that we had to propose realistically, based on our budget and based on our staffing, what projects we can accomplish and what projects we don't see that we can accomplish this year. And so I'm just going to highlight kind of the categories and some of the priority projects. The big project in our parks department, well, there's actually a few, but the big one is the Bubbling Springs Park renovation and dog park project. As the third recommendation on this item, we recommend appropriating the ARPA funds that had previously been identified for other projects. We recommend appropriating all of those at this time for the Bubbling Springs project. The Bubbling Springs project had a $7.5 million grant. At this time, it's clear that we would need to appropriate the $2.87 million in ARPA funding that we had kind of scattered across projects, that's going to need to be included in the Bubbling Springs project. And there still may be, with cost, supply chain impacts and cost increases, that Bubbling Springs project could still potentially be more than that $10.37 million total. We would, and we are planning to work with the team on that and try to come back and scale that project to the amount of funding we have available for it and bring those recommendations to council. But the reality is, when we adopted the ARPA projects initially, we had maybe expected that less of the ARPA funding would be needed for Bubbling Springs, but it's not that case, or that's not the case at this time. So big priority project this year is essentially $10.37 million towards Bubbling Springs Park renovations in the dog park. We also have projects such as the Miranda Park improvements, lighting, basketball court lighting, and the walkway improvements. Swing sets at Hueneme Beach, those are added in. They were not in the plan previously because it had been pulled into the Destination Playground project. But because we're recommending reallocating the ARPA funds, we are recommending getting the swing sets done now. We think we can do that with our existing staff so that the community doesn't have to wait for those any further. And then we have some housing improvements to the Mar Vista building and the 323 C Street building. City Hall and police station upgrades. We're actually demonstrating some of the City Hall updates now, and the police station is moving forward now with our dispatch and renovations. And then the non-glamorous projects, the necessary infrastructure projects like storm drains and preventing sinkholes and the Scott Street sidewalk, which was approved, and the library parking lot repairs and water system replacements. And so we revised the list to focus on those. It's still an ambitious list, but it's a more realistic list that we can focus and try to complete those projects this year within the amount of funding that we were trying to reduce the impact on our general fund budget. And so I expect we'll talk about those more, but to finish the staff presentation, so we're essentially making 3 recommendations at this time. And one is a kind of it's a future city council discussion, but it's going to take some staff time. So as just a good practice, I'm asking the council to direct that we prepare an item to actually create a CIP fund. My goal is going to be to create one that uses a specific funding source. And I'll give an example. Measure U is a topic that comes up a lot where we are asked often what projects Measure U is being used to fund. And I think because of that budget analysis we gave about how right now our revenues are just matching expenses and the projects are coming out of the unassigned fund balance, the city hasn't been able to answer that question. But if we move forward and we set a policy where we identify Measure U funds as an example, and that's to come back and to be discussed, but identify Measure U funds for CIP, we can actually then come back every year and report out that those funds are being used for the projects and list those projects and have that accountability with the public. And so recommendation 1 is to get that the city council direct staff to prepare a policy, analyze that, and come back with a policy to start a CIP fund. The other benefit that has is it also tells everybody kind of in advance, here's how much money we expect to have for our CIP, and so we need to prioritize our projects to match that funding. Whereas in the prior CIP, there was never a cap. It was always just if you add more projects, the cap, there was no cap on how much was spent. So that's recommendation 1. Recommendation 2, provide any feedback on the revised CIP and direct staff to proceed with the revised CIP. I noted in the slide here, this is a first step. I think the revising the CIP as proposed would reduce the deficit from $2.7 million to $1.8 million. We would still be looking at our budget closely. We'd still be coming back with recommendations at the mid-year budget, but it's a first step. And the reason why we're recommending it now and the reason why I kind of rushed this item to council is we have projects right now that we're ready to, or that we potentially would be starting, but we need to make these decisions before we start a bunch of projects that we realize we won't have the funding to complete. So that's recommendation 2. Recommendation 3 is approve the change to the ARPA funding, where the ARPA funding goes to the Bubbling Springs Park project to provide the additional funding needed without additional general fund impacts. So those are the 3 recommendations, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
I'll start with Councilmember Martha McQueen.
Just one question. So we have the FY 23-24 capital improvement projects listed here. So if these projects are not completed this year, do they become priority in the next year?
So that's not what I'm recommending.
Okay.
To me, and it's maybe listed in the staff report a little bit more, but to me, there's not a shortcut for the CIP. The answer is every year when it comes budget time and we know what our revenues are and what our expenses are, we should be looking at the CIP and deciding what we can afford and what's a priority. And I think that the word rollover is like built into the CIP, and that's something that we got rid of because the idea of just if you don't get something done, it rolls over to the next year. It's not really prioritizing it. It's not realistic, So what I would propose is, as part of our budget review, we have that meaningful CIP workshop where we say, and again, like the first question should be, okay, what can we afford this year? And from what I can see, I don't see that was ever a question or answered.
Okay.
And so that would be the start of our presentation, and we'd discuss that as a council.
So the reason for the question is, so there is a list for FY '23 and '24.
Mhm.
And so I guess my mind tells me that these projects are on the list because they are somewhat a priority of some sort. And if they are a priority now, then I understand things in the environment changes and they may not be a priority next year. But if they're priority now, my mind is telling me that then why wouldn't they be priority next year? So that's kind of where the question came from.
Yeah.
And so I understand re-review, maybe the environment has changed, something has changed in items. I just imagine that the dollar amount is not the single determining factor.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. But I would say, there are projects, or there's a trend across the country that project costs are going up. And I've said this a couple times to people, but when ARPA came out, my reaction was that the city I was in at that time got such a small amount that ARPA was not going to help us. It was actually going to hurt us because other cities were getting much higher amounts. And the limited pool of contractors that we all are trying to get are now going to increase their costs because every city has a lot more money. And so ARPA, City of Port Hueneme got a little bit more money. I think it was $2.8 million. But again, we're seeing project cost increase of $2 to $3 million per project for some of these larger scale projects. So like that ARPA funding isn't going to go as far. And so it's not just dollars, but that is a case where if we had 4 projects that were a priority because we thought we had ARPA funding for them, and then now the costs have increased and that ARPA funding can only cover 1 project, it means 3 projects are going to have to wait, or we have to stop and say, this is important enough that we're going to spend our general fund dollars on it. But that should be like a very thoughtful, conscientious decision, knowing that it means we might have to cut, other budget items to fund these projects. So it's not just the dollars. There's other projects too that, we were able to figure out, like smaller fixes. And so now the big project can get pushed back a couple years, but that's definitely a factor.
I want to ask like a follow-up question to your question. So you're saying, so now the list has gotten smaller, nothing's going to roll over. So does that mean, can you assure us that all these projects are going to get done within this year, 23, 24?
I just, to be like completely frank, all of these projects will not get done this year. There will be projects that, for one thing, look at Bubbling Springs. So for Bubbling Springs is actually a great example because the current grant expires December 31st, 24. So that won't get done in fiscal year 23, 24.
Okay.
And so, but these are the priorities that we're going to work on and get moving and get going this year. There's several that we know we can finish, but not all of them are going to get finished this year. So,
But nonetheless, they're all going to get started.
our plan is to start and make progress on all of them.
Councilmember Gama?
Thank you. Some of your voices sound really good on this, so I'm trying to make my voice sound much better.
I think what helped is when I got closer to it. Maybe
Or
these need to be longer.
turn up the volume, pump up the volume. No? How's that? Okay. So, Mr. City Manager, general fund should be the funding of last resort when it comes to CIP. I think that's what you're saying, correct?
The unassigned fund balance should be
right.
and it's not even like the funding of last resort, but it's just we shouldn't be planning to use it all with no plan to have any money in a couple years,
Okay.
which is the current.
And on these recommendations, is it one of the three or all three of the recommendations?
It's all three.
Okay, that's good. So just to be clear, Bubbling Springs, well, I do know like a destination playground, a lot of money has been spent, right? Already. I mean, not a lot of money, but
Some money,
some money. I don't know if it's 600,000. I don't know what,
not to that level.
okay. But again, we spent the money and now it's affecting our unassigned budget, our unassigned funds. And then with the Bubbling Springs, I think what you're telling us is that even in the best environment that we could shape in the current cycle, we're gonna exceed the $10 million. And then that is gonna have to come from the unassigned general fund. So,
Or we'd have to find other funding sources, grants,
right,
et cetera. And I think there is some, there is the potential to scale some of it down. So that's why I'm stopping short of saying it's guaranteed to go over that. But we are going to have that discussion of, do we scale it down or do we find some more funding options?
right.
I
But
think that conversation's coming.
But the bottom line is that we got to reverse the trend.
Mhm.
We have to really, really tighten up our belt and really prioritize how much money we're going to spend. Like how low is what's the safe? I mean, what percentage should be our unassigned general fund compared to our
Mhm.
total expenditures? I mean, I know we had that conversation before.
Yeah.
And so going from 16 to 7, that's a big drop. Clearly, we're going to have to put the brakes on and do things differently. But my concern is that Bubbling Springs, even if we try to be as positive as possible, that's maybe not being realistic, but it could run 2 to 3 to, I mean, it could run, in your experience, it could run a couple million over.
Yeah, I was giving people estimates over the last year of add 50% to your original cost, and I was pretty spot on with the 4 or 5 projects that had been completed since that point. So if we had looked at, I think the original was about 8 million on that, so another 50% would be 12 million. And so again, just going back to the fund balance, if the only plan right now is to use this money and that cost went up $4 million, then that means we're down to 3 million next year.
Right.
So it's just, we're doing some large projects right now that just 1 or 2 of them going way over budget would put us in a bad spot if we aren't managing that closely and keeping an eye on that and starting to adjust to prepare for that.
And in regards to Bubbling Springs, where are we on that? Are we realistically thinking we're going to be able to complete it by December 2024?
Yeah, so we are currently having team meetings with Public Works, Housing, Facilities, and I've been participating in some of them. And essentially, I don't think it's going to be completed by December 31st, 2024. I think we have the ability to extend that grant to extend the deadline. And I think meeting with the project management team and everything, I think we're aiming for as soon as we can, but I think we're going to ask to extend that deadline out a couple months.
And is that guaranteed? I mean, when you ask for an extension, you'll get an extension, or how does that work? I'm unfamiliar with that.
Yeah, I think that we can justify it. So I think we're confident, we are confident that we can get that extension. We are still working as aggressively as we can and trying not to count on that. But just, I think realistically, I think it's going to be a few months longer than that. So.
Okay, well, that's a really good example of the problem, and I really appreciate the work that you've put in this in such a short amount of time.
Thank you.
Councilmember Hernandez?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Martinez, and thank you, fellow council members, for your comments, and thank you, City Manager, for your diligence on finding these trends and noting them. I wanted to follow up with Mayor Martinez's question. When you said all projects would start, are you referring to that they would start this year? Are you referring to the projects on page 6, or are you referring to the list of projects under this spreadsheet that you've given us?
Yeah.
The 2023
So the spreadsheet,
CIP.
spreadsheet that's printed out is the same one. It's just printed larger so people can hopefully see it better. But it's the same one as attachment B. It's listed as page 13 of 17. Page 13 of 17 and 14 of 17,
Okay.
those two pages are meeting with all of our departments and our teams. We talked about what realistically can we get moving on, make progress on. Some of these are fairly simple and we will get them done. And then other ones, like I said, Bubbling Springs is the perfect example of, even right now, the best case scenario isn't getting it done in this fiscal year. And that wasn't even necessarily the plan. It was getting it done next fiscal year.
Mhm.
But we expect to get moving and spend a big portion of the funding on that project. So,
Okay, I was just trying to get a handle on
Mhm.
what projects we can realistically expect will get started and which ones will be put on hold,
Mhm.
because our constituents, our public, are going to ask.
Yep.
And they're going to want to know. So
Yeah.
if somehow we could somehow put something out to our residents about these changes, I think that would be really helpful.
Yeah, and that's
They understand what's happening here.
yeah, that's something we would definitely do following. Once there's an adoption of a plan, we would put out some information saying, here's the projects that we're working on this year.
And then I had a question on page 6 of 17. You have 2 dog parks listed,
Mhm.
a small dog park and a large dog park. They're priced the same. So what's the difference?
Yeah, and so that is the only page 6 of 17. So I try very hard not to make the staff reports like technical and like in finance jargon, but that's the dog parks are the only things that are shown as kind of finance jargon. And what it is that originally the dog parks were combined as one project on the ARPA appropriation list. And as we've developed the Bubbling Springs, now there's two. There's a small dog park and the large dog park. So it's just splitting those, instead of dog park, it's splitting it into small and large with equal funding for each. So in other words, it's just a finance cleanup. It's not, it's that, that's the one thing on this list that isn't actually a change. It's just cleaning it up to match the finance documents, going from calling it one project in prior years to now calling it the small dog park and the large dog park.
Okay. Go ahead.
So does that mean it's one dog park with 2 parts, one for the little dogs and one for the bigger dogs? 'Cause I frequent dog parks.
Yeah.
And usually that's the
that-
case. They have the little guys over here, the big guys over here.
Is that it?
So I'm going to ask Gabby if she can speak to it a little bit, because I've seen the scope. I haven't seen the plans yet.
Good evening, City Council. To answer your question, yes. So it is one park, one dog park, but we will have a small dog park. It's going to be, we're going to have a fence around the small one, a fence around the big one. So this is all just a cleanup that we're doing here in order to bring the project into one.
So you have little dogs. I have a big old dog.
Yes,
We'll be in,
we will be in 2 different areas, yes.
but side by side.
That is correct. There will be like a common area in the middle with some seating. So our residents and our visitors will be able to go from one area to another.
Mayor Pro Tem?
The big old dog.
I don't have any questions. I just want to thank you for making this a priority. And even negative news is better than not knowing what we're dealing with. And I would rather have the full truth of everything so that we can make informed, practical decisions with the money that we are stewards over. So thank you.
I do have one question. How much money should be on our unassigned fund balance?
So it's,
or what do you recommend?
yeah, and there's no one size fits all, but there are cities, and I'm saying this from memory. I actually meant to look it up today and I didn't get a chance to, but I'm pretty sure this is correct that like Thousand Oaks, for example, has $200 million in their unassigned fund balance. And they're sort of always, when it comes to budget, because of the auto center and the mall and all that, they always sort of have, kind of more than everybody else. But, it just sort of sets the example of, the reason I use that as an example is because, somebody could look at this and go, well, we have $7 million, we're fine. Well, there's other cities that have 100 million, 200 million. And I think a big part of it comes down to like, what are our plans and what are we planning to use it for? And right now, the funding we have isn't enough to do all of the projects that were on the 5-year list. And then it definitely isn't enough to do anything after that. And so um, we need to start making that adjustment now to kind of rebuild it as we go so that we keep funding to do projects and to do to maintain streets and things like that. So.
All right, and I know you said there's no size,
Mhm.
not something that fits, every city, but I would still want like an idea
Mhm.
of like how much you think we should have.
Mhm. Uh, for me, a good goal would be to get back to the $16 million that we had in our unassigned fund balance a couple years ago. If you look at our CIP document that we put together, by the end of what would have been the 3rd year, the general fund would have shown a negative balance of $12.5 million. So if we can build that up to about $16 million, that would be enough to cover all the projects on this list and still have a little bit of funding left over.
Thank you. All right, so let's move on to public comments. Are there any public
I have
comments?
one more question, I'm sorry. So just for proportion purposes, what is the City of Thousand Oaks, what's their expenditures per year?
I meant to look all that up before the meeting and
Okay.
I didn't. I can give you the example of when I left Ojai, their budget's about half of what ours is, and I had gotten their unassigned fund balance to about 6 or 7 million. So we're about the same, but their budget is half the size.
Right, so
And
that
so-
16 is a pretty comfortable number for you. then.
Yeah, and I think we have a lot more projects. I think a big thing is it's like look at the kind of the wish list and start adding it up and how much money do we need to really do those
So
projects.
you mentioned Thousand Oaks, is that the gold standard or?
They're the gold standard.
Okay, so,
And the reason I mention them is more just because I have heard people say, well, 7 million, we're still fine.
right,
Well, yeah, if you don't look at what other cities have, 3 million sounds like a lot of money.
right,
3 million can go in just the Bubbling Springs project.
right. And if proportionally that 200 million is half of a
Yeah.
$400 million budget, then,
Yeah.
then we have a standard.
Yeah, and I think about 50% of a budget would be a good goal, which is about what that 16 million is.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any public comments regarding this item?
No public comments.
All right, the recommendation is to receive an overview of the city's budget as it relates to the capital improvement plan and impact on the general fund, and direct staff to prepare and schedule a future city council item to establish a policy for a capital improvement plan fund, with a designated annual commitment from general fund, which will allow for an annual meaningful review process for the capital improvement plan. Number 2, receive a draft revised capital improvement plan that reduces the general fund budgetary impact from $3,550,000 to $2,166,000 and provide feedback regarding priority projects. Number 3, appropriate the revised capital improvement plan for the fiscal year 23-24 and fiscal year 24-25, including ARPA and State of California Parks and Recreation grant funds for the Bubbling Springs Park Renewal Project. May I have a motion and a second?
Move to approve.
Second.
Is there any discussion that anybody would like to entertain? Madam Clerk, can we please take a vote?
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously.
All right. Moving right along, item number 13, advertisement for RFP for Economic Development Plan. Will staff please present the report?
Yes, thank you. Um, So that motion was faster than I thought, sorry. Um, So I think I'll summarize it this way, that over the last several years, I think there's been multiple conversations regarding economic development, and that some of the recent discussions focused on what is our plan regarding economic development? Do we have a city plan? We've sort of had projects that were working towards economic development, but they weren't all pulled together under a plan with a specific strategy. It was sort of a project over here, a project over there. And so, I believe that at a recent meeting, the city council even stated that before we keep doing individual economic development projects, the council wanted to see a citywide economic development plan. And so, with all of that in mind, and I would say coming in as a new person and seeing that we do need a plan, we need a plan that has public feedback and a plan where we know that everybody sees what the goal is and can work towards one goal. We put together a request for proposals for an economic development plan, which is included in the packet. And we are recommending that the city council authorize the release of that request for proposals with the intent of releasing the RFP and getting responses by early November to then bring a contract back to and proposal back to the council to obtain a consultant to go through the process, including a public engagement process, to develop an economic development plan for the city. And so that RFP is included in the packet. We are recommending releasing it. The scope that we include in the proposal includes data review by the consultant, a SWOT analysis of the city and the surrounding environment, engagement with key partners, opportunity to allow residents to provide feedback and to gauge resident perspectives on various goals and strategies, and also including economic development goals that are stated in our 2045 general plan. And so we recommend releasing the RFP, that the city council authorize staff to release the RFP. Funding is included in the budget this year. We included funding in the budget in anticipation of doing this, so there is funding available in the budget. And the last note is just, as we are working on this, our plan would be to not have sort of the piecemeal economic development projects going, and so we're holding off and pausing other projects, and we're not moving forward with the economic development consultant at this time, pending the ability to put together a plan and see what needs the city has. So we're recommending releasing that RFP.
All right. Does council have any questions for staff?
Thank you, Mayor Martinez. I had one question today that I submitted by email, just to give you a heads up, and I just wanted to raise that question here in public. And one of the reasonings I've been so excited about doing a public art program and establishing an art council is because there's an economic benefit to having a really good public art program. It's called Econo Art. And so my question for Tony Stewart and Mr. Vega was that, will this contractor, or will the RFP include thinking outside the box on considering that our assets are limited and that we're built out? You know, we need to really look at other areas. And I think the Econo Art idea is something that I hope will get included in this plan. So I imagine it could happen along with the SWOT analysis, you know, if the council has an opportunity to participate in that SWOT analysis, we can make sure that it's included. Is that correct?
And that was going to be the response was that so it's not specifically like the econo art idea is not specifically called out in the current RFP. The council could add that as, you know, specifically requesting analysis of that. But I do think that there's going to be an ongoing discussion with the council. There's going to be ongoing discussion with the community. There will be opportunities for those conversations, and I would expect those conversations to happen. But to answer the specific question, it's not currently included in the RFP.
But I expect that it'll be raised. There'll be plenty of opportunity to have that raised.
Yeah, I would
Okay.
be, I would expect it, and then we'll note it in as something that we'll make sure that we kind of
We look for.
look for. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
On that note, I would think that any aggressive RFP or respondent to the RFP would look at any and all opportunities for economic development. And I hate to even bring it up, but I'm going to, like, that hotel that would be a great little boutique hotel. And, you know, I bring it up because I was really interesting to learn that in the city of Ojai, the Ojai Valley Inn is their biggest revenue generator, right?
Correct.
Yeah, and so, anyways, I think it's really exciting to think outside the box and get these RFPs out there and see what ideas are out there, and because they're going to bring the best and ideas to us, which is maybe I'm naive, but I would think that the qualified respondent who eventually impresses us will cover all the potential that we have here.
Yeah, I would expect that the consultants are going to come back with all of those ideas and then do the SWOT analysis and get the community's feedback and then bring those recommendations back. So
Oh, no comment? Or, I mean, question. I do have a question. So this right here is a Community Environmental Council 2022 Impact Report. It's not that long. It's got like 30 pages, lots of photos, big writing. Numbers are clear to understand. Like, it's easy to understand. Is there something in the RFP that requires them to provide something like this? Because this would be my I would like council to have this desire, something physical that the community can hold and say, hey, I know and I understand what's going on in our economic community. You know, something like this here, if you guys would like to see it. But is there anything like that on the RFP?
if the and I got the sense that there may be council support. I think we can add some language to it if assuming council support to make it clear that the plan or either the plan or maybe like a supplemental document, but there needs to be like a publicly accessible public document that, you know, is that the average person can read and understand. And if the right now the RFP asks for development of a plan, and if you've seen the economic development plans, they're usually like pretty public facing, but I think that's even like a level above what they are. So we can include a requirement that they end up including in their proposal a public facing document.
Basically, it's something that's easy to read and understand. Like, I feel like that's very user friendly. No more questions? Are there any public comments regarding this item?
Yes, we have a Zoom public comment. Bear with me one moment. We're going to see if this works.
I was going to ask about that. Where is our Zoom? Oh,
And it's Tracy. So Tracy, if you can hear me, you can go ahead and provide your public comment. Yes,
hear her though.
yes.
We can hear you, Tracy.
Very clearly.
Thank you. So I guess I'll speak to that. I think uh, there's a few of us who got together and drafted this, and I think the idea behind it was not intended to slight the chamber in any way. The idea was, as part of an economic development plan moving forward, we are all going to need to have a plan to have both the city and the chamber working together and working towards the goal of enhancing economic development. Um, I think that it's important to include them in the plan as a group that we need to work with. Um, I'm looking at the language as we speak to see if there is like a simple modification to it. Um, but I guess to speak to Tracy's point is we don't have sort of ownership of the chamber at this point, and so we know that in this plan that it's not the intention of developing this plan is not to assume that the city has that. It's to talk about how the city and the chamber can work together and what the goals will be moving forward. So um, I I was looking for maybe potential language to make that clearer, but I think maybe it's just a statement that we would be sensitive to the concerns that Tracy has. Sure. Okay.
Are there any more public comments? All right, the recommendation is to authorize the city manager to advertise a request for proposals for the development of an economic development plan. May I have a motion in a second?
Move to approve?
I'll second that.
I do also have a motion to authorize the city manager to advertise a request for proposals for the development plan and also add an impact report for our community. So
A re- Does it work, say, a requirement in the RFP for like a
yeah,
public facing document,
yes,
similar to an impact report?
yeah, similar.
Okay, got it.
I wanted to ask if you would mind amending your motion to include a change in the language after hearing
Oh yeah, that's
Tracy's
yeah.
comments that
Mhm.
the chamber is viewed as a key stakeholder rather than a problematic entity.
Yeah, I think that's a good.
Yeah,
good
so
use of
I'll,
words.
I'll change my motion so that includes the report and change the wording that Councilmember Hernandez just pointed out from our public comment. I don't know if there's any seconds.
I will second the amended motion.
Are there any other motions? All right, discussion? Madam Clerk, can we please take a vote?
Okay, and just for the record, we'll be taking a vote on the motion made by Mayor Martinez to include um,
Report?
the report of the public-facing document and to include the language that Councilmember Hernandez had noted, seconded by Councilmember Gama.
Yes.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously.
We're moving on to number 14, designation of voting delegate and alternates for the 2023 League of California Cities Annual Conference. Will staff please present the report?
Yes, thank you. The League of California Cities Conference is coming up, and as we do every year, we are asked by the league to designate a voting delegate and an alternate for the conference. The conference is September 20th to 22nd in Sacramento, with the last day, September 22nd, being the day that the General Assembly convenes. Currently, we have 2 council members registered to attend the event, Councilmember Hernandez and Councilmember Gama. So it would be a good idea to have the person attending be the person that votes. And so with that, we're here for any questions, but we recommend the council delegate designate a delegate and alternate for the conference.
I'd recommend Councilmember Hernandez be the voting delegate. My microphone went off. Did you get that?
I'll second that.
Wait a minute.
Okay, first I want to ask if there's any questions. No questions? Are there any public comments?
No public comments.
The recommendation is to appoint, okay, well, actually, let's just have a conversation.
Can we have a conversation?
Yeah, so
Yes,
let's have a
please.
conversation.
So I was the voting delegate last year, and you were my alternate last year. I already made plane reservations that will take me, I'll be leaving early on Friday, so I won't be able to stay as voting delegate. So I would like to ask if you would.
Yeah, that being said, I'll make a motion to appoint Councilmember Gama as the voting
And
delegate.
then I'll be the alternate. If I have to change flights, maybe, I don't know
I
if
will
I'll do that,
second
but,
the amended motion.
okay, thank you.
Right, so I will second the amended motion.
Is there any other motions or are you?
No, but it's good to know because I'll make my plane reservation so that.
We'll be there Friday.
Okay, Madam Clerk, can we please take a vote?
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously.
Right,
And I did make my plane reservation after I didn't do it before. I didn't see this. Yeah, so.
It's okay. You
I didn't
were
do it
our
on
voting
purpose.
delegate last year, so it's okay. Mr. City Manager, do you have any comments or reports to share at this time?
So only one, and I alluded to it earlier with the red curb discussion, but we're working to, on the next agenda, have a couple of items that are related to speed limits, traffic safety, and traffic enforcement, kind of making that the theme of the meeting. And so we are planning to do that on the September 18th agenda. And so that typically, I guess I should have said, typically how I use the city manager comments and reports is to talk about what we have planned for the next meeting. And so that's what we have planned for the next
Okay,
meeting.
sounds good. Council member reports and comments. We'll start with Martha McQueen LeJohn.
Thank you, Mayor. Just quickly returning back to my meetings this week. I will be missing the Ventura County the VCTC meeting on Friday due to my travel with the Caligas hosted inspections. Let's see. Yeah, I'm looking forward to a Caligas Municipal Water District State Water Project inspection trip. That's going to be Friday through Sunday. We're going to be starting in Sacramento and then working our way back to this area. So really looking forward to that. I did want to mention for Gold Coast Transit, they will be on September 23rd and the 24th. There is going to be an art walk in downtown Ventura. And downtown GCTD will be having free bus rides downtown on those 2 days. So you can catch on the bus and go to the sites that you would
What were
like
the
to go to.
dates?
The 23rd and 24th of September, downtown Ventura. And it's an art walk. So they'll be providing some bus passes. So that's for Gold Coast. Let's see, what else do I have here? Just for our city clerk, in case I haven't already communicated it to you, RDP 21, Regional Defense Partnership for the 21st Century, they have dropped the 21st Century. So they're a Regional Defense Partnership. I did want to share a couple of things that I did, quite a few things that I did on our month off. I was able to participate in the beach cleanup with the Amgen. We had the Wheelhouse Lounge ribbon cutting. We had our chief of police talked about our Community National Night Out, which was a wonderful event. I was able to participate in the 59th visitation of the Oxnard and Ocotlán Sister City. Great. They did invite some of the council members, whoever wanted to participate, to go to participate in the events and to go to Amazon tour. I really wanted to do that, but I found out at the last minute they don't take elected officials on visitations such as those. So my husband got to go and I did not. Let's see. I did participate in the United Water Conservation District celebration, where they were celebrating the collection of the 4 million square acres of water. Is that the right term? Square acres of water? Acre feet, yes. And then participated in our supervisor VNA Lopez sponsored a graffiti abatement, and myself and Councilwoman Hernandez were able to participate. And yes, and our mayor as well. We look like Ghostbusters out there with our white overalls and big boots. Uh-huh. And then the Health and Wellness Fair here at the city was wonderful, learned an awful lot. It was a great day. And then the mayor, on behalf of the mayor, who was unavailable, I participated in the U.S. Coast Guard birthday, and we presented the Coast Guard of the Year, I can't remember his name, with a certificate from the city. I was able to participate in connection with VCTC. They had a community meeting regarding the Santa Paula branch line. There's been issues since the bridge collapsed during the last big rain, and there's been some cars, I don't know the right word, train cars that have been posted. There are about 100 of them, and they're creating, they're causing graffiti. People are coming in that, the residents are complaining of gangs and people coming in since those cars have been there. So it was really good hearing from VCTC about what they have been doing, what their goal is in moving forward. The Santa Paula branch line folks were there. The folks that do the bike rails were there. So it was a good opportunity for me, being new to the committee, and this being a topic that has been going on for quite a while. It was a good event for me to kind of see the big picture and learn everything and bring myself up to speed. So I appreciated that. Also, in the absence of our mayor. I participated in the Joanne Bar Newellen Celebration of Life, which was really good. I did find out and told the mayor that there's a connection with the family and Puerto Vallarta. So it was really nice to know there's a history there. And we have to learn more to know what that history is, since there's a connection between Port Hueneme and Puerto Vallarta. And of course, I had my first one-on-one with the city manager, which was very informational and learned an awful lot. And I'm just so glad that he is working to bring us as a council up to speed so that we can make, like our Mayor Pro Tem said, informed decisions for our residents. And the last one was just a trip this weekend to Sacramento. So that's kind of what I've been doing over the last month.
Councilmember Gama?
Yeah, I just love this logo staring me in the face. Pretty awesome. And I want to congratulate staff on what they've done here in this chamber. It's such a great improvement. And to those watching online, if you see this later as a recorded version, we're tinkering with our microphones. These are high-tech microphones, and it's pretty amazing as we fine tune it. I just learned if I turn it up, I could hear much better. And also my voice now seems to be projecting better as well. I participated in just about everything Martha McQueen LeJohn mentioned, the police night out here. I got to introduce our new dog Magoo to the residents of Hueneme. That was really fun. Thank you for the tacos, Chief. I am just so inspired with what is happening here in our city. We're coming together, we're working together, we're dealing with things that aren't comfortable to deal with, but we're just gonna do good things, and we're gonna work hard to do that. And it's really nice to be able to come to a community event, whether it's a police night out or the fun run or beach cleanup or graffiti abatement. There seems to be a trend in our county of people getting involved and doing things. And I think that's what we want. And it's tough. And I know the city has struggled in the past to get people motivated to be on a commission and to get things done. So it just feels like we've really turned a corner and that we are going to accomplish great things. And sometimes we have to take a pause back, and I think that's what we're learning tonight with our CIP issues, is that we're being good stewards of the money, and we're competing against all these different municipalities who are trying to and there's rising costs, and so we have to be really diligent in recognizing that and dealing with it effectively. And I'm just excited, looking forward to our next meeting in 2 weeks. There's a lot of things I'm sure I forgot about, but it seemed like 3 months off. So it seemed like a long time. And it's nice to see you all back up here again, and look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks and working hard and doing better.
Councilmember Hernandez?
Thank you, Mayor Martinez. I won't go into all the activities in August. I think a lot of them have been already mentioned. While we were off, our work still continued with some of the events that took place in August, including just recently the storm and the earthquake that we had. I will have some meetings this week coming up on Thursday, especially. Everybody seems to like Thursday as a meeting time. And so I've got a conflict, and I wanted to thank Councilwoman Martha McQueen LeJean for stepping in to attend the VRSD meeting. It's very frustrating when there's one group that does not want to use Zoom for people who can't attend in person. So that's what's happening there. Otherwise, I would have been able to attend. But instead, I'll be in LA attending a SCAG, series of SCAG meetings. I've got Cal State Site Authority meeting coming up. I had one in August. This is an audit committee that I sit on. We did do a graffiti abatement with Supervisor Vianey Lopez's office in August on the 5th, and we're going to be doing another one on the 9th. So if you're interested in joining us, please contact her office so you can get on the list. I attended a variety of legislative webinars. The big topics are hearings, mandatory hearings for redistricting. Hopefully we won't have to go through that, but if we do, yeah. And then also ACA 13 is a big topic right now, and I heard a webinar on it today. It's being strongly opposed by Taxpayers Association, Chambers of Commerce, but California League of Women Voters and Cal Cities are supporting it. So if you want to brush up on your legislation, I can provide some materials to you for that. We have the annual coastal cleanup coming up on September 23rd. And there's already been some announcements made. Thank you, staff, for putting those, posting those announcements. I expect we'll have close to 200, 300 volunteers, don't you think, Stephen? Yeah. So it'll be a good day. It'll be a fun day. I hope everybody reserves that date and comes out, and I'll be looking for volunteers to help with registration and counting. We're going to do things a little differently this year. So nonetheless, it should be a good cleanup day for everybody. Oh, and also this month September is National Preparedness Month. Hopefully we'll be able to recognize that. And also 9/11 is next Monday. And typically they have a flag ceremony at the fire station at 7 a.m., 7:30, which I'll plan to attend. But I was hoping the fire chief would be here today. I could confirm with him if that's still happening. But I'll just give him a call and find out, and then let everybody know in case they'd like to attend. Other than that, I think that's it for comments.
Mayor Pro Tem?
I did not attend as many things. My days were filled with working, but I did attend a few items. I had no committee meetings. Obviously, many things were dark. One of note, I attended the Explorer fundraising event. That was the Havana Nights, which was huge success and a lot of fun. And they do such a great job with that. And I think a couple of us attended, city manager attended, and it was really, really fun event. I did attend of note, which is the first time ever, a discussion with the transportation department and how to prevent suicide on bridges, which is starting at the 118 freeway, to discuss on how to reduce the problem with, obviously, suicide off the bridges. So there'll be more to follow up with that. This is Suicide Prevention Month or Suicide Awareness Month. And I'd like to note that there's about 50,000 people so far have committed suicide this year. So it's actually increased from the years before. So we have to get our discussions out there and talk to our community members and talk to our children and talk to everybody who is struggling, because it's a real, obviously a real killer. And we need to do something to turn that tide around and reduce those numbers. We'll be going to DC next week, so I'm putting together or working on lists of what we're going to be discussing with all the various people we're going to be meeting with. So if you would like, the rest of you, if you would like us to make note of anything specific, please send us that information so that we can add it to our talking points to all the people we're going to be meeting. Anything of note? So,
I believe we saw an agenda, right?
nah,
It was, I think it was
It's-
in the last council meeting, we saw an agenda.
I think we had the initial proposed list from the port was included in the last council packet, I think.
so a list of who the people we're supposed to be meeting with. So if you have anything specific you want us to bring up while we're meeting, let us know. So we're going to make outlines about that, our own talking points. I have the EAG meeting this month. Not a lot going on right now, but, the 28th, 10 a.m. and 5 p.m. is our community landscape presentation, so that the community come out and take a look at what we've been doing for the policy group and all the changes that we're implementing, and community feedback will be helpful. We'd love to get as many people possible just to take a look at everything that our landscape experts have been putting together.
I should know the dates. Can you remind them?
28th,
Okay,
time
that's
again?
right.
10 a.m. and 5 p.m. There'll be two of them at the community center.
Will it be live will it be?
Yes, there'll be slides, there'll be
Live
information.
stream? Will it be on?
No, I don't believe it's going to be live stream, but they'll have people there that know the information in depth. All questions asked and answered. There'll be a presentation, slides, different pictures and stuff just to show of what we're going to be introducing for our new landscape policy recommendations.
Yes, and
we'll
we are,
plan to record it. I think I'll double check with that, but we can plan to record it. Although I don't think we can live stream it that easily. So we'll plan to
Okay,
record it.
great.
and yes, we are going on the DC trip next week on the 12th. So we'll do a good job of representing the city. I did participate in a lot of the events mentioned just now. One not mentioned was the Wainimi Beach Festival. Really proud of that event. It was a great event. Also, the sister cities met up, and I thought that was pretty cool. It was our first official meeting. And the last thing I just want to mention is I believe the city manager did a really good job of pushing out the newsletter. So I've seen 2 of them. Really great job. Can't wait to see the next one. And that's about it for now. I don't plan on saying anything else. We are going to move on to requests for future agenda items. I'd like to remind council members that all requested items will require a motion, a second, and majority vote per adopted council policies. Does anybody have any requests for future agenda items? Councilmember Hernandez?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Martinez. One of the meetings I had this summer during our break was a meeting with a policy advocate from CAUSE who introduced to me the concept of rent stabilization and eviction protection. And she shared with me the work that they've done in Oxnard and gave me some templates to review. And so what I'd like is to ask if we could have an agenda item to discuss the feasibility of establishing a rent stabilization program and developing eviction protection for our residents. Can I get a second on that, please?
I'll second.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none. Motion passes unanimously.
And then I also wanted to ask, do I need to ask for an agenda item to talk about coastal cleanup, or do we need to get approval for this to be a city-sponsored event?
For the annual cleanup,
Yes.
no, that one we're good on. So no, at this
Okay.
time.
And then I wanted to know if we were going to hear a post-event report on the beach festival and find out, how they fared budget-wise.
Yeah, so I have a meeting with the group either late this week or next week. And so we were going to meet and talk about how we were going to kind of wrap it up. So we can make that an item if there's a council desire to have an item. I think in the past, it had been an item because there were a lot of things that everybody wanted to talk about. And so I didn't know if there were a lot this year or if we needed to wrap it up. So I guess that would be a good topic for the council to decide if there should be a future item to go through it.
Maybe after the CAC reviews it?
Sorry, the CAC, as we mentioned earlier, would review it on October 9th. So that'd be a good way to do it.
After that would be nice. I don't know if we need a vote on that.
It's consensus. I think it's fine.
Okay. I don't know if I need to put this on as a request for a Banana Festival proclamation. Do we need to vote on something?
No, that's currently on the schedule.
Okay.
And the port had requested it, and so it's on our schedule for the next meeting.
Okay. And then I do have a request. So I have a request for city staff to help out the Sister City nonprofit get started. And then for possibly just kind of figure out how we're going to go about the meetings, kind of like how we just switched the meetings for CAC to be moved in council chambers. I just want clarification on that, and then possibly also helping us promote our next meeting at the end of the month, this next month, because the Puerto Vallarta visit is right around the corner. It's gonna come by real fast. So I was hoping maybe we can get some staff to help us out with either like a video or adding it on the newsletter. So just basically, I'm just asking for city staff help on the next sister city meetings and creating of the nonprofit. I think I already brought it up like a meeting or two ago, but I just want to get it on the books again.
Yeah, and I had assumed, I think I always assume if the council's creating a committee to start looking at something, that there is going to be some, at least some minimal staff support to it. So things like you said, like including it in the newsletter and stuff like that. But obviously, if the request is for specific assistance and we want that to go through the council, then that can be requested. So
Yeah, I don't know if the council remembers. Did we already say that we were gonna have city staff help us out create the nonprofit? I thought we did.
Well, you may have mentioned it, but I think because our policies and procedures require that if anything exceeds a certain level of effort, that we should get council approval on that. And this seems to me to go beyond, your normal,
Yeah,
can you
so
give me?
I would like to have an agendized item where we talk about that.
and so then per our process, then is there a second and a vote
So
to
that-
do so?
Are you making a motion? And I'll second that. Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously.
Are there any other future agenda items?
I wanted to follow up on the street sweeping schedule. Some time ago, we made a request to have a new street sweeping schedule, which allowed for alternate days for different streets. And I think that was like a year ago that we discussed that, and I haven't seen anything come about that since. So I'd like to have an update. Is that request for a vote, or you're going to give us an update follow-up?
So we could give an update, especially if you mentioned that it was a pending request from the past. So we can give an update. If it's specifically a request for an agenda item, then I think it would need to be a vote. So if
I
an
just-
update's fine.
I
then-
want an update
Okay.
on as to where we are on that.
Okay, got it. So we can provide that.
All right. Any more requests? We're gonna call it a night. Everybody's ready? All right, so the next regular meeting is scheduled for Monday, September 18th, 2023 at 6:30 PM. I'd like to adjourn the meeting. The time is now 9:33 PM. Everybody, please get home safe and have a good night.